Bai Junwang couldn't help but feel a bit distressed watching from the side. The infusion of countless forces of nature seemed too wasteful for the task at hand. Killing a Tier 4 emperor was a simple matter, why go to such lengths? Boom! In the end, Yan Chongqing couldn't bear it any longer, and his origin source, after expanding to the extreme, began to collapse. Jian Wushuang pondered in his heart. The collapse of the origin source, the move he had just thought of, didn't seem impractical after this experiment. To others, it might seem a bit extravagant, but he had too much force of nature within him, allowing him to squander it as he pleased. This was an experiment on the collapse of a Tier 4 emperor's origin source. If he used this move when casting the One Thought universe, causing the universe to collapse, the origin sources of the powerhouses within the One Thought universe would collapse along with it. The ruthlessness of this move exceeded the imagination of outsiders because no one had ever been this crazy before. Gong Miaoyi also saw through the personalities of the two. One was reckless and impulsive, and the other was ruthlessly decisive. Both were not insignificant figures, and their beauty had no effect at this moment. You should have some grievances with the Mo Luo kingdom. Gong Miaoyi directly voiced her speculation. Bai Junwang was first stunned, then turned to look at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang tapped the armrest of the throne, not too surprised, and praised, "Still quite clever." From their first meeting, he felt that this person was extraordinary. A Tier 3 emperor who managed to attract several Tier 4 emperors, whether it was because of appearance or methods, was not simple. Swish! Jian Wushuang teleported directly in front of Gong Miaoyi, his gaze fixed on her unparalleled beauty. In the flickering depths of Gong Miaoyi's eyes, there was a trace of charm. "What is your relationship with Mo Luo? Tell me everything." The Eye of the Candle Dragon activated, guiding Gong Miaoyi to reveal everything about the affairs of the Mo Luo kingdom. Upon learning everything, Jian Wushuang felt somewhat disappointed, but a hint of joy appeared when he heard about Turtle Spirit Island. The eldest prince, Luo Sha, is there. Having a Tier 7 emperor is somewhat troublesome. Jian Wushuang pondered, then turned to Bai Junwang and said, "When will the physical divine body arrive?" Bai Junwang shook his head. "There's no reply for now, but it should be soon." "Nonsense." Jian Wushuang's expression darkened. He had no prior knowledge that Luo Sha, the eldest prince of the Mo Luo kingdom, was a disciple of the Turtle Spirit Island Lord. With a Tier 6 peak strength, he had to wait for Luo Sha to come out. Attempting to kill his way through would be seeking death. However, once Bai Junwang obtained the physical divine body and fully restored his peak, everything would become feasible. Unfortunately, there was still no precise time on Bai Junwang's side. "Sir, why not cooperate with this young lady? The fourth prince of the Mo Luo kingdom is likely already waiting outside with his forces. If I fall, you will be trapped here. And even if you manage to escape, it'll be challenging to survive at the hands of the fourth prince, Luo Chuan." Gong Miaoyi calculated, holding on to her last bargaining chip. Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up. The fourth prince of the Mo Luo kingdom. Now the bait in hand is not enough. Jian Wushuang can only catch a fourth prince. If he can capture the external Luo Chuan, he might be able to lure out Luo Sha. The two are real brothers, and he should come to rescue him. Jian Wushuang contemplated. However, what if the Island Lord of Turtle Spirit Island personally comes? Bai Junwang's current strength is good enough to fight against a Tier 5 Order Emperor. At that time, let alone seizing the Beast God weapon, it might be difficult for him to survive. If it were other forces, he wouldn't be afraid. But there are only a few disciples on Turtle Spirit Island. Luo Sha's strength is also at the peak of Tier 4. He may not come to the rescue, and even if he does, he may bring several Tier 5 emperors with him. The other party controls a batch of elite armies from the Mo Luo nation. He needs some preparation. The fourth prince outside is a good bargaining lip. Forget it. Let's cooperate next time. Jian Wushuang reaches deep into his hands, directly grabbing Gong Miaoyi's jade neck, ready to understand her. Bai Junwang, standing on the side, reveals a strange look, but seeing Jian Wushuang's determination to kill, he dare not oppose it, only feeling regretful. However, When Jian Wushuang's palm touches Gong Miaoyi, there is a hint of surprise in his eyes. He found a faint commonality in the other party's body or the origin source, related to the ultimate origin source. His ultimate sword Dao was currently stuck at the 7th level, not even reaching the peak. The breakthrough seemed elusive, and he wondered when it would happen. On the contrary, the breakthrough in the realm of the extreme Dao had a clear direction, with his avatar constantly contemplating within the black hole, advancing rapidly. The realm of the black hole was a shortcut to the perfection of the extreme Dao, an opportunity that his once most confident swordsmanship had never encountered. After reaching the 7th level, what the swordsmanship pursued, purity and perfection, became a dilemma for him. The diversity of the extreme Dao, encompassing all things without discrimination, contradicted the purity sought by the ultimate sword Dao, which aimed for the utmost simplicity and unity. These two paths fundamentally differed, and it was already quite challenging for Jian Wushuang to cultivate both to such an extent. Originally, he had planned to take it step by step. He wouldn't abandon the improvement of the extreme Dao just because his sword Dao was stagnant. Such a practice would be foolish. As long as there was still room for improvement in the extreme Dao, he wouldn't let go of any opportunity. The same applied to his sword Dao. Now, however, he saw the ultimate Dao opportunity, where the taste of the ultimate Dao was present. This was the first time Jian Wushuang encountered the aura of the ultimate Dao in the 4 great secret realms. In the 4 great secret realms, he couldn't even find a complete path, but now he encountered the ultimate origin source. This shocked him. He slightly loosened his grip on Gong Miaoyi's hand. Unable to catch her breath, Gong Miaoyi found Jian Wushuang releasing his hold and sensed an opportunity. She trembled as she said, "Sir, spare my life, and I will reward you generously with treasures worth tens of billions of godstones. I am willing to offer them with both hands." Tens of billions? Jian Wushuang shook his head. He didn't really care about that. He just wanted to know how the other party cultivated this origin source. But this wasn't the place to consider these things. They had to get out first, and they could study later after leaving. After releasing her iron clamp-like grip, Gong Miaoyi took a step back, her chest heaving. Just moments ago, she had come dangerously close to death at the hands of Jian Wushuang, and now she dared not employ any clever tricks. She had thought that Jian Wushuang, upon hearing about the treasure, had set aside his murderous intent. She quickly stabilized Jian Wushuang. "Sir, I will activate the inheritance within the hall now. It will only take a day, and all the treasures will be yours. One only ask for my life," Gong Miaoyi said as she bowed deeply. From the looks of it, it was clear that she wanted Jian Wushuang to provide her with a guarantee. Bai Junwang, standing on the side, remained silent. He could see clearly and understand Jian Wushuang's character. Since he chose to spare Gong Miaoyi, there must be some reason for it. Otherwise, given Jian Wushuang's decisive and ruthless nature in combat, he would not have spared her. Jian Wushuang saw through her intentions with just one glance and said coldly, "You can access the inheritance, but I will inspect it. Don't play any tricks, and your life will be spared." With this promise, Gong Miaoyi wasted no time. She stood up and began to activate the inheritance. The dome of the great hall trembled, and a moment later, a transparent crystal ball descended from above, landing in front of Gong Miaoyi. On the crystal ball, the reflection of Gong Miaoyi's face was visible. Jian Wushuang and Bai Junwang retreated to the corner of the hall, silently observing every move of Gong Miaoyi. The owner of this inheritance is not a Tier 5 emperor. It's likely someone who intruded and placed this inheritance in the cave. Bai Junwang, with his extensive knowledge, immediately recognized the uniqueness of the inheritance. A treasure not easily obtainable even by a Tier 5 emperor. Though not as knowledgeable as Bai Junwang, Jian Wushuang, too, could sense the scattered aura within the inheritance. Felt familiar, akin to the aura within Gong Miaoyi, all connected to the ultimate Dao. Previously, he had wondered in the ancient era, although the ultimate path was rare, there should have been quite a few. With this ultimate inheritance, mastering the Dao shouldn't have been too difficult. Even if the probability was just 1 in 10, there should have been many ultimate emperors. These emperors' ultimate techniques should have been passed down. But now, not to mention the recently born universes like the original universe, even within the Qixin Temple, there should have been a collection of many ultimate techniques. Yet, in this aspect, he hadn't heard a single mention. Now, seeing this inheritance, it was his first encounter with an ultimate technique. Bai Junwang noticed the exceptional nature of the inheritance but didn't see the connection to the ultimate Tao. This inheritance should be created by the owner of this cave. Jian Wushuang shook his head, rejecting Bai Junwang's view. Bai Junwang was momentarily stunned. While he held Jian Wushuang in high regard, especially regarding the origin source, he couldn't agree on the matter of vision and insight. He questioned, "How can you be so sure? The owner of this cave is indeed a Tier 5 emperor, but they are likely a Tier 5 ultimate emperor." Jian Wushuang's eyes flashed. Ultimate emperor. He had seen it before, not just once. Back in the Qishui Hall, he had sensed many auras similar to his own. Later, on the original planet in the original realm. Whether it was Hu Qing or Ji Chaoyang, he had witnessed each other's actions, and that aura was all too familiar to him. Although there was a great gap between Tao emperors and emperors, the aura wouldn't change. The pursuit of the ultimate origin source, the ultimate Tao, was far different from ordinary origin sources. Bai Junwang, upon hearing the term ultimate, exclaimed, "Ultimate Emperor? Are you sure?" Having lived for so long, he had only had close contact with Jian Wushuang, an emperor who pursued the ultimate Tao, and had experienced a lot through their close connection. However, it was not his origin source and he knew too little about its core. Jian Wushuang just nodded without saying more, fully focused on watching Gong Miaoyi accept the inheritance. Ultimate technique. If the 4 great secret realms possessed such inheritance, it would have been plundered by the 4 great temples long ago. How could there still be leftovers? Keeping the ultimate mastery in the 4 great secret realms would be a waste. Gong Miaoyi seemed to have many secrets, and when they got out, he would have to explore them thoroughly. A native emperor in one of the 4 great secret realms with mediocre strength, he couldn't see anything extraordinary about her. Just an ordinary peak-level Tier 3, he could easily kill her with a casual move. But Gong Miaoyi's body contained the ultimate, and she could also accept the inheritance of the ultimate technique, which was quite incredible. The robe on Gong Miaoyi's body fluttered as she sat quietly, accepting the inheritance. This inheritance was left to her by her mother, and that jade slip recorded her origin and her father's secrets. She couldn't die like this. She had to accept the inheritance and continue the path her mother couldn't finish. She was going to tread an impossible path. Her mother had descended from the heavenly realm, pregnant with her, severely injured, and had lost her foundation. Otherwise, she wouldn't have fallen like this. All of this was because of her. At this moment, how could she dare to betray her mother's teachings? Cultivating the supreme technique, returning to the heavenly realm to avenge the blonde Fend and finding her father, this is the lifelong wish she vowed to accomplish as long as she stayed alive. Streams of light converged into a single point, gathering at her chest, and a faint purple armor appeared beneath her black robe. The inheritance reached a critical moment. Her origin source continued to ascend, and the originally damaged origin source began to repair itself at this moment. Divine power began to transform, condensing from simple strength into a unique force. It was the power of the Sun God, a true ancestor of the Beast God, a Beast God 1 level higher than the Candle Dragon, the Golden Beast God, also known as the Sun God. It is the source of space. The Candle Dragon also contains the power of the Golden Space, but it is born from within the Golden Space, 1 level lower than the Sun God. Jian Wushuang watched nearby with envy. This kind of ultimate technique is too incredible. It truly deserves to be the ultimate technique. He couldn't help but exclaim. The ultimate emperor from before must have been an extraordinary genius. Otherwise, he wouldn't have created such a supreme technique. The power containing the Sun God's force implies that space has reached its peak. But why is that emperor only at the Tier 5? Jian Wushuang frowned. In the future, when he goes to the Grave God Mountain, he must seize the opportunity to ask the Zhenling face to face. Such a character is definitely not an unknown person. Gong Miaoyi's power is ascending. Her entire being has undergone a transformation, and even the brokenness of her breath has undergone a tremendous change. That aura, when combined with her exquisite appearance, turns Gong Miaoyi from a pleasant person into someone with an imposing aura, like a queen. The transformation of her strength now, at the very least, matches the peak power of a fourth-ranked expert. Jian Wushuang wasn't surprised. If Gong Miaoyi remained as useless as before, it would be truly unbelievable. It must be said that Jian Wushuang has picked up a treasure this time. Phew! Gong Miaoyi slowly stood up, exhaling a long breath. The inheritance has ended with no difficulty whatsoever. This unique technique is related to her internal origin source, making it a perfect match, hence, there was no difficulty. After the transformation of her strength, when she looked at Jian Wushuang again, she still couldn't see through him. This extinguished the thoughts that had just arisen in her. Apart from Jian Wushuang, there is still a Tier 5 Peak Emperor beside him. Thank you, young master, for protecting the Tao. Gong Miaoyi bowed and expressed her gratitude. As the inheritance concluded, the crystal ball disappeared, returning to the dome. This inheritance can only exist once. Unless Gong Miaoyi falls, it cannot be passed on again. This secret is known only to Gong Miaoyi. If it were to be revealed to outsiders, she might not survive. Even though not everyone could cultivate the inheritance, at least one should give it a try. Not to mention, those Tier 6 old monsters would definitely come to snatch it. A Tier 3 Emperor could be easily killed with a casual move without any hindrance. Obtaining a powerful inheritance was just a matter of course. Even if one couldn't cultivate it, taking a look would be beneficial. Perhaps it could help oneself in some way. This secret had to be guarded, just like her mother did, revealing many things only when she fell. Now that she had mastered that extraordinary technique, she found it to be much more powerful than her mother had told her. She now felt confident enough to cross levels and battle even Tier 4 emperors without any issues. This was also the reason she had the confidence to recruit several Tier 4 emperors to this place. Once the inheritance was accepted, her strength skyrocketed, comparable to top-level Tier 4 emperors. With numerous treasures at her disposal, she had no fear of her fellow emperors. However, encountering Jian Wushuang and Bai Junwang was an unexpected situation. The two of them had unfathomable strength, and even with her boosted power, she didn't dare to act recklessly. Jian Wushuang stood still, unsure of the opponent's strength. He turned to Bai Junwang, signaling him to investigate. Bai Junwang naturally had no objections to such a request. "Little girl, your technique is quite special." Bai Junwang approached with ill intentions, startling Gong Miaoyi. Just as he was about to make a move, the great hall suddenly began to shake. Jian Wushuang quickly stepped back, leaving the hall. A powerful aura surged, not from the appearance of a formidable opponent, but from the birth of an extraordinary treasure. This aura spread far and wide, even perceptible in the outside world. Above the swirling sea, the fourth prince of the Mo Luo nation, accompanied by a contingent of Mo Luo troops, floated in the airspace above the sea. No cultivators in the vicinity dared to approach. Western Sea cultivators are mostly independent practitioners, with very few sects and no kingdoms. In the Western Sea, forces like the Mo Luo nation are dominant powers. A group of 100 emperors, with the presence of even Tier 5 emperors, make their mark in the Western Sea. Furrowing his brows, Luo Chuan noted that the two Tier 4 emperors had already fallen. Despite pinpointing the location, he couldn't detect any traces of aura. Even the Tier 5 emperor who accompanied him couldn't find anything. "Your Highness, there is absolutely no cultivator here. I've checked the bottom of the swirling sea one by one, and the only Tier 5 Emperor-level Demon Lord has been slain by me." The only Tier 5 Emperor in the group frowned. He was originally patrolling in other seas when Luo Chuan pulled him over, mentioning something about eliminating rebels. Yet, after wandering around here for almost a day, not a single figure was seen. Some dissatisfaction naturally crept into his heart. Both being princes, the eldest prince continuously fought in battles, gaining remarkable achievements. However, the fourth prince, despite having formidable strength, seemed to be incapable of anything, earning the disdain of these veteran generals who only looked up to Luo Chuan. It was only due to Luo Chuan's identity as a disciple of Turtle Spirit Island that he held some significance. This was all thanks to the intervention of Mo Luo's Grand Elder and the face given by the island master of Turtle Spirit when they accepted the fourth prince as a disciple. With this identity, the fourth prince's position within the royal family was quite extraordinary. After all, strength was the foundation. But there was still a significant difference between the royal family and the military. Prosperity in the royal family did not necessarily guarantee success in the military. The military valued not only strength but also military achievements. On this point, the eldest prince, Luo Sha, had achieved to the extreme. He managed to refine his elite forces under the command of the Grand Elder, and now he commanded 1/5 of Mo Luff's army, including 10 Tier 5 Emperor-level cultivators. And the fourth prince, with no soldiers in his command, had only a few Tier 4 emperors bestowed upon him by the royal family, along with some servants he had recruited from the Western Sea. Now facing a Tier 5 emperor from the military, even though the other party didn't show much courtesy, Luo Chuan couldn't afford to offend him. "General Kuan-tai, my intelligence is accurate. Just wait a little longer. This time, the opponent is a big fish." Luo Chuan revealed a smile, appearing quite amiable. He didn't actually possess any intelligence. It was just his subordinates informing him of a location, and he hurriedly came over. As for that inheritance, he didn't care about it at all. Gong Miaoui. A portrait of Gong Miaoui appeared in Luo Chuan's mind, and a slight smirk formed on his lips. This time he came for Gong Miaoui. Her constitution was unique, and if they could cultivate together, it would help him break through to Tier 5. That was the key. Elder brother Luo Sha was currently in seclusion, attempting to break through to Tier 5. The two had been comparing themselves since childhood, and he couldn't afford to lag behind. Although he had no interest in the throne, within the royal family, strength spoke louder than words. Only with sufficient strength could one obtain more resources. On Turtle Spirit Island, they only imparted the Tao, not treasures. The reason he could progress so quickly was due to the family's treasures and the guidance of the island master. Both were indispensable. In terms of leveraging advantages, he surpassed the Crown Prince Luo Chuan. At least he was adaptable. He would never confront the elder Luo Sha head-on like the Crown Prince did, leaving Mo Luo with his army and coming to the Western Sea. Buzz! A burst of aura erupted, churning the sea into chaos. Luo Chuan's expression brightened, leading his people straight to the bottom of the swirling sea. Inside the cave, Bai Junwang was the closest to Gong Miaoui, but he dared not approach any further. He could sense that the overwhelming aura originated from Gong Miaoui herself. The aura was majestic, although it was the aura of a supreme treasure. It was not to be underestimated. Jian Wushuang squinted, and he shouted sternly, "Let's go! Go? Do you think I'll let you go?" A domineering and cold voice echoed, and Gong Miaoi's eyes were somewhat bloodshot. The black robe instantly burst, revealing the tight-fitting red armor that enveloped her graceful figure, with curves that were enticing. Her long hair danced in the air. Her jade-like hand gently lifted, and blood-red lines on her arm became visible, tracing to the fingertips. With a slight opening of her palm, a blood-red crystal ball floated in her hand. Peak level Tier 4. Jian Wushuang frowned. He never expected that this time, things took a turn for the worse, and they were played by a young woman. Bai Junwang stepped back to Jian Wushuang's side. The ancient monster who had lived for countless years had misjudged the situation. No wonder she readily agreed to all the conditions back then. It turned out she was waiting for this moment. Gong Miaoui nodded. "Elle didn't want to kill you, but unfortunately, you've seen too much." Originally, she had planned to take Jian Wushuang and the others out, hoping to encounter the fourth prince of the Mo Luo kingdom and use him as a tool to escape. However, Jian Wushuang and Bai Junwang had seen too much. Moreover, she had a premonition that there was some kind of connection between Jian Wushuang's aura and hers. At first, she didn't notice, but after taking over the inheritance, she felt that something was wrong. She couldn't see through Jian Wushuang, a Tier 3 emperor. Taking a risk, she took out a treasure from the inheritance. The eternal treasure, Bloodfall Crystal. It was a top-level eternal treasure, a priceless gem, the peak treasure of the 4 great secret realms that not even Tier 6 emperors necessarily possessed. Upon mastering it, she directly broke through to the Tier 4 peak emperor. Her strength increased by hundreds of times. Now, not to mention a Tier 4 peak emperor, she could even contend with a Tier 5 emperor. Whiz! Gong Miaoyi was stunned. As her aura burst forth, her divine body seemed somewhat unable to withstand it, and cracks appeared on her body. Although she was just a holy maiden of a small faction, her mother had many treasures. Although they were liquid assets, obtaining even a small portion allowed Gong Miaoyi's divine body to break through to 10,000-fold sooner. However, later on, she had always focused on the origin source, not delving much into the divine body aspect. Now, with her strength suddenly soaring, it made her divine body somewhat unable to cope. Jian Wushuang outside the main hall quickly noticed this and immediately shouted, "Take action!" Just a peak level of Tier 4, even with a complete Dao, was not much different from the current Bai Junwang. Jian Wushuang didn't even consider them a threat. The two of them joined forces, easily dealing with a Gong Miaoyi. Phantom sword images began to appear, thousands of illusory swords rising into the air. Transcendent immortal formation. He wanted to see how strong Gong Miaoyi was. In terms of the origin source, she was no weaker than the current Bai Junwang. It's worth noting that Bai Junwang's origin source was created based on secret techniques devised Shenling, combined with the power of all things, painstakingly refined through blood sacrifice. On the other hand, Gong Miaoyi, a holy maiden from a small faction, possessed such a formidable origin source. Especially after inheriting the Legacy Supreme technique, her origin source had become even more powerful. Jian Wushuang pressed down his intentions. Regardless of the circumstances, today, he must defeat Gong Miaoyi and thoroughly study her. These 4 great secret realms were different from what he had imagined and heard. Now he was truly experiencing them. "You!" As the three clashed, Gong Miaoyi stared at Jian Wushuang with a surprised expression. Previously, Jian Wushuang had not truly made a move. Now that he had unleashed his origin source, Gong Miaoyi, feeling the pressure from the powerful origin source, found her breath becoming somewhat unstable. The fact that Bai Junwang's origin source could contend with Gong Miaoyi's had already surprised her. Her mother had told her that the origin source within her was the strongest among the 4 great secret realms. However, just after inheriting it, she encountered someone with an origin source nearly as potent as hers. Then there was something even more outrageous. Jian Wushuang's origin source aura surpassed hers by several levels. If her origin source was like a spring, then Jian Wushuang's origin source was like a vast ocean. Though her origin source was suppressed, Gong Miaoyi's current greatest reliance was the bloodfall crystal in her hand. Blood-colored lines burst forth, instantly restraining Bai Junwang. Jian Wushuang furrowed his brows, his figure ghost-like as he instantly transformed into thousands of clones, dispersing in all directions. The formidable restraint of the blood-colored lines made Jian Wushuang cautious. Not daring to take risks, he unfurled a pair of wings at his back, and the beast god domain suddenly descended. His divine body began to swell, 20,000-fold, 23,000-fold, 26,000-fold, 27,800-fold. In an instant, the divine body erupted to an unprecedented degree. Wings fluttered, and in his hands appeared an ancient and simple long sword. It was a replicated eternal treasure long sword. Bai Junwang, entangled and uncomfortable, was originally a powerhouse following the divine body path. Now, with the divine body absent, possessing only the origin source without profound techniques and secret arts, he could handle practitioners weaker than him. When facing a formidable opponent, he felt helpless. Moreover, he had nothing on him. He had no treasures, so he was just a naked Tier 4 peak-level powerhouse, struggling within the blood-colored lines with the might of his powerful origin source. "Don't struggle." Jian Wushuang once again rushed into the lines. He noticed that the more Bai Junwang struggled, the tighter the lines became. Bai Junwang paused for a moment, then quickly understood. After all, he was an experienced powerhouse with quick reactions. The blood-red lines were quite effective against Bai Junwang, significantly weaker against Jian Wushuang, who was on the verge of transcending space. Upon re-entry, his figure became elusive, and the icy blades severed countless approaching blood-red lines, posing no threat to Jian Wushuang. With a graceful spin of his long sword around his waist, Jian Wushuang's brow flickered, and with a glance, the entire spatial structure unfolded before him: upper 3 layers, middle 3 layers, lower 3 layers, layer upon layer of space interwoven within the world, with the blood-red lines threading through the 9 layers. Swish! Jian Wushuang's figure vanished within the entire 9-layered space. Even his presence disappeared. The blood-red lines couldn't menace him but could obstruct him. Lingering here was not an option. He had to quickly take down Gong Miaoyi. Delaying would lead to unforeseen changes. Initially, he thought that after helping Bai Junwang reshape his origin source, even without a physical body or divine body, he should at least be comparable to a Tier 5 emperor. Yet, he ended up in a sorry state, and now Bai Junwang relied on him. At the end of the space within the black hole, Jian Wushuang's figure moved like a ghost. This was a technique he comprehended from within the black hole. Concealing the body in the rift of the void would eventually be discovered. Only by entering the black hole could one truly isolate everything. In the deep layers of space, Jian Wushuang was like a black hole. Facing the sudden disappearance of Jian Wushuang, Gong Miaoyi's expression changed. Astonishingly, she couldn't sense Jian Wushuang's presence. Did he run away? Gong Miaoyi lightly twirled the bloodfall crystal, countless blood-red lines swirling around her. She couldn't be certain if Jian Wushuang had left immediately. This space was independently created and not a cave where one could tear through space and depart at will. Within the cavernous space, encompassing 9 layers of space, even a Tier 5 emperor would find it impossible to escape, let alone Jian Wushuang, a mere Tier 3 emperor. In Gong Miaoyi's mind, while Jian Wushuang's strength held an air of mystery, it didn't seem outrageous enough to surpass that of a Tier 5 emperor. Nevertheless, precautions were necessary. Thousands of bloodlines surrounded and crisscrossed the 9 layers of space, impervious to anything below a Tier 5 emperor. Bai Junwang felt increasingly entangled and uncomfortable, angrily shouting, "You've angered me, and you will die for it." In this moment, he reverted to his former fierceness, startling Gong Miaoyi. At this level of strength, who could still be frightened? He. Deal with me first before saying such things. Gong Miaoyi's attention was not on Bai Junwang. She casually responded and ignored him. If it came down to raw power, she was not Bai Junwang's match. But with bloodfall crystal in hand, she could use softness to conquer strength and firmly suppress Bai Junwang. Jian Wushuang, on the other hand, was truly enigmatic. His ability to seize opportunities was exceptionally strong. Just as Gong Miaoyi diverted a fraction of her focus towards Bai Junwang, his figure transformed into particles within the folds of space. His divine body was now at the strength of 30,000-fold. He condensed into a point, instantly erupting into a miniature black hole. Devour! Whoosh! A powerful suction force scattered Gong Miaoyi's consciousness. The bloodfall crystal, which had just unleashed its power, attempting to pierce through the black hole formed by Jian Wushuang, halted as it approached him. Without consciousness, the bloodfall crystal lost its luster. The blood-red lines vanished. After Bai Junwang escaped confinement, he turned around, delivering a fist accompanied by a powerful storm. Gong Miaoyi suddenly snapped back to awareness, her pupils contracting. The impending fist came to a sudden halt. This time, it wasn't Bai Junwang showing mercy. Rather, it was the strange, or rather, familiar voice of Gong Miaoyi. "Are you Jian Wushuang?" Bai Junwang looked at Gong Miaoyi, pointing at her in disbelief. Gong Miaoyi paused for a moment. Then, with a voice that seemed both male and female, said, "I've entered her body." Jian Wushuang, having transformed into particles and entered Gong Miaoyi's body, had directly occupied her origin source. He initially considered devouring Gong Miaoyi's origin source directly, but later he realized that instead of devouring it, it would be more efficient to nurture it and slowly consume it. Seated cross-legged on Gong Miaoi's origin source pillar, Jian Wushuang casually addressed her. Behind him loomed a black hole, capable of ending Gong Miaoi's existence with just a thought. Within the origin source, he relied on powerful thought power. While Gong Miaoi's origin source was formidable, her thought power was mediocre at best. Jian Wushuang could extinguish her origin source avatar with a mere breath. "What do you want?" she asked. Jian Wushuang shook his head and replied, "What do you want?" The inheritance he inherited was exceptionally unique, unheard of. This wasn't in the original planet, where inheritances were typically presented by Jinling and could be explained no matter how powerful they were. Similar to Hu Qing's samsara inheritance, it came with a built-in barrier that was invisible unless Hu Qing informed him, revealing its immense strength. The ultimate supreme technique that could be cultivated by the ultimate Tao Lord was undoubtedly extraordinary. However, in the four great secret realms, scarce were the origin sources, and the appearance of an ultimate emperor's technique was perplexing. Could it be intentionally placed here by Jinling? Clearly impossible. Both Chihuang and the old man with goat horns explicitly stated that those from the four great secret realms couldn't use it. Otherwise, they wouldn't control the realms as if herding pigs. Gong Miaoi was completely flustered. She had no way out now and could only try to stabilize Jian Wushuang as much as possible. This inheritance was left to me by my mother, and she left so suddenly that she didn't have time to explore it. Jian Wushuang's thought power moved, pulling Gong Niawai directly in front of him. He gazed into her eyes, where the color resembled a starry sky, truly beautiful. "If you dare to speak a single false word, I will lock your physical body in a mundane pig cage. Your divine body will be refined into a dark lamp, and one will tear apart and devour your origin source." This time it wasn't just a threat. If he couldn't pry open useful information, he would have to take ruthless action. Gong Miaoi prostrated herself before Jian Wushuang, her body trembling slightly. Her mother had just fallen, persecuted within the stellar pavilion, and outside, she had to rely on the lascivious fourth prince of Mo Luo. Now, she had fallen into the hands of Jian Wushuang, who intended to thoroughly strip her clean. In the end, she might not have a peaceful death. "Go ahead and kill me." Gong Miaoi's eyes were slightly red. This time, she wasn't pretending to be pitiful to gain sympathy. She had resolved to die. Speaking of death wouldn't make it any more pleasant. Instead, she chose not to speak and let the other party torment her however they wanted. Looking at the peerlessly beautiful woman in front of him, Jian Wushuang furrowed his brow. He hadn't expected her to be immune to his tactics. It seemed she was prepared for death. Jian Wushuang stood up directly, saying coldly, "Fine, very well." Since that was the case, there was nothing more to say. Jian Wushuang directly manipulated Gong Miaoi, suppressing her origin source and taking control of her body. "Let's go." Seeing the hesitation, Jian Wushuang, controlling Gong Miaoi, spoke coldly, "Let's talk outside first." This time, they didn't find any treasures inside, but gaining control over Gong Miaoi wasn't a bad outcome. Leaving now, they might encounter strong individuals from the Neo-Luo nation. With Gong Miaoi's identity, Jian Wushuang could conveniently infiltrate the side of the crown prince, Luo Sha. Swoosh, swoosh. Two figures appeared beside Gong Miaoi. These were Jian Wushuang's avatars, casually altering their origin source to become two Tier 4 emperors. Gong Miaoi took in a sharp breath. Compared to being controlled by Jian Wushuang, his methods were even more terrifying. "You come in too." After some thought, Jian Wushuang called out to Bai Junwang. After bringing Bai Junwang back into himself, Jian Wushuang's avatar suddenly turned around, and a palm slammed into Gong Miaoi's chest. A burst of crimson blood sprayed out from her heart. Jian Wushuang's avatar nodded, sneering, "This looks more authentic." Now, Gong Miaoi's origin source pillar was quite lively. The three sat in a circle. Jian Wushuang informed Bai Junwang of some known information. There was little left for Bai Junwang to conceal at this point. Bai Junwang listened, frowning. He spoke to Gong Miaoi. "Are you seeking death?" Seeing Gong Miaoi turning away without a response, Bai Junwang's tone turned cold, and he said maliciously, "Since you can't be of use to us, then go die. Your influence will also be destroyed. I heard your mother's body is still well preserved. Rest assured, I'll take good care of her." The rest of the threats didn't concern Gong Miaoyi much, but when she heard about her mother, a hint of strangeness flickered in her eyes. She was completely alarmed. She could forsake her own life, but she couldn't allow anyone to disrespect her mother. Smack! Bai Junwang's palm landed on Gong Miaoyi's head, employing a demonic technique to seize her memories. This wasn't a simple soul search. It could extract even the subconscious thoughts of the target. A highly sophisticated method. Jian Wushuang, standing on the side, watched in astonishment. "Her father is not dead yet." Bai Junwang turned to Jian Wushuang, revealing a hint of wickedness in his smile. This was a bit too much. Gong Miaoyi trembled all over. Even Jian Wushuang hadn't expected Bai Junwang to be so ruthless. The scene of father and daughter reuniting should be very touching, right? Bai Junwang looked at Gong Miaoyi again, and the two exchanged a glance, revealing despair. She compromised. Jian Wushuang shook his head, sighing, "It seems I'm still lacking." Outside, the cave began to contract, and Jian Wushuang's two avatars immediately dragged Gong Miaoyi out. Just as a terrifying palm was about to strike, the huge palm strike directly shattered Jian Wushuang's avatars, leaving only a trace of the origin source consciousness. "General Kuan Tai, this woman is one of mine." The fourth prince stepped forward. Kuan Tai's expression changed. Looking at the two individuals he had just suppressed, he felt like he had been played. When he came, Luo Chuan didn't say it would be like this. With a forceful squeeze, the giant palm directly annihilated the last trace of the origin source. Luo Chuan, however, wore a smile and walked to Gong Miaoyi's side. He got what he wanted, and as for offending Kuan Tai, he didn't care at all. He wasn't in the military, so why would he be afraid of a general from the military? It's good as long as nothing happened. Luo Chuan's hand touched Gong Miaoyi's shoulder, and his expression changed. Gong Miaoyi, on the other hand, remained silent. But in her heart, she conveyed to Jian Wushuang and the others, "We've been discovered." Jian Wushuang had sensed that something was amiss. It wasn't Gong Miaoyi playing tricks, but the fourth prince of the Mo Luo kingdom was extraordinary. He could actually detect something special inside Gong Miaoyi. Now that they had been found, Jian Wushuang understood the importance of striking first. A power of all things poured into Gong Miaoyi's origin source, instantly restoring her peak strength. Then, another part of it entered Bai Junwang's body. "Attack!" Jian Wushuang shouted. At the next moment, he appeared behind Gong Miaoyi, raising his hand to strike a sword towards her head. The ancient long sword slashed towards Gong Miaoyi, and as her body began to shimmer, it eventually turned into bubbles. However, the sword did not miss and instead struck Luo Chuan's neck. Clang! After a heavy muffled sound, Jian Wushuang realized that the opportunity was gone, and he could only retreat. Upon realizing something was amiss, a transparent armor had already condensed on Luo Chuan's body, an eternal treasure that Jian Wushuang's casual sword strike couldn't break. Meanwhile, Gong Miaoyi and Bai Junwang were engaged in a battle with the strong forces of the Mo Luo kingdom. The Tier 5 Emperor there was extraordinary, at least comparable to a top-level Tier 5 Emperor. Even with the combined efforts of Bai Junwang and Gong Miaoyi, they were being pressured in the fight. In the depths of the swirling sea, the water began to reverse, creating monstrous waves that disrupted the calm surface. Feeling the threat, Luo Chuan immediately elevated his body, rushing towards the surface, attempting to break through the sea. The princes of the Mo Luo kingdom, though harboring their own schemes, were not afraid of death. Luo Chuan's surge was not an attempt to escape. Under the eerie atmosphere of the underwater, he was more concerned that Jian Wushuang and the others might escape. Therefore, he first revealed a fearful appearance, led Jian Wushuang out of the underwater, and then took action. Surprisingly, Jian Wushuang hadn't anticipated this. According to the plan, he, Gong Miaoyi, and Bai Junwang were prepared to start by killing Luo Chuan and then besiege the Tier 5 Emperor. Unexpectedly, Luo Chuan's vigilance was so high. After the failed sneak attack, Bai Junwang and Gong Miaoi could only join forces to engage Kuan Tai temporarily. Want to escape? The one who spoke was the fourth prince of the Mo Luo kingdom, a big shot. But now was not the time to fish. Bai Junwang and Gong Miaoi couldn't hold out for too long. Plus, there were 100 Tier 3 emperors, including dozens of Tier 4 emperors. Jian Wushuang's wings flapped behind him, vibrating through the layers of space, and in an instant, he arrived in the midst of these people. Eye of the Candle Dragon. Wrapped in wings, his body flipped in reverse, tearing through countless emperors in an instant. The Eye of the Candle Dragon swept across, turning these people directly into stone. When dealing with Tier 3 emperors, Jian Wushuang slaughtered them effortlessly. Even Tier 4 emperors couldn't withstand his attacks for long. Puff! His wings spread open, and the stability of the beast god's domain was not perfect. The continuous attacks caused his divine body to drop to around 20,000-fold. Now, facing two Tier 4 peak-level emperors, he struggled a bit. Meanwhile, Luo Chuan, seeing that Jian Wushuang wasn't pursuing him, turned back. Among these emperors were also some under Luo Chuan, but they couldn't be saved in time and were mostly slaughtered by Jian Wushuang. The remaining Tier 4 emperors kept their distance. Kuan Tai, noticing this scene, erupted in anger. He dispelled Gong Miaoi and Bai Junwang with a palm and rushed towards Jian Wushuang. You seek death. These 100 emperors were all his direct lineage. With so many dead at once, Kuan Tai was not only concerned about accountability but also saw everyone as rebels. Ironically, Luo Chuan seemed more like a traitor from the Mo Luo army. If Luo Chuan weren't a prince, Kuan Tai would have killed him already. These emperors, once experienced generals who had fought for countless eras, were now slaughtered like this. The Candle Dragon wings trembled, and Jian Wushuang's figure disappeared. Kuan Tai's attack missed, but he didn't give up. He gathered several streams of purple-gold thunder in his palm and unleashed them. The sea turned purple, and the thunder's power made the water boil. The sea in the tens of thousands of miles around this area boiled from its cold state. Fortunately, the sea monsters here were not weak, preventing mass casualties from the scalding. However, the sea monsters at the core of the swirling sea suffered greatly, with many falling in masses. This had to be Jian Wushuang. Otherwise, Kuan Tai wouldn't give up. Standing on the side, Luo Chuan wasn't afraid of Jian Wushuang, but at this moment he was a bit afraid of Kuan Tai. He hadn't expected Kuan Tai to be so enraged over a few weak emperors. Thunderous anger. But that was understandable. Isn't it ridiculous? Kuan Tai turned to look at Luo Chuan, his voice icy. What you want, you had from birth, but what we want, we have to fight for ourselves. Luo Chuan couldn't quite understand, but he could sense that Kuan Tai might attack him at any moment. If Jian Wushuang wasn't found soon, he might become the outlet for Kuan Tai's anger. Jian Wushuang, in the form of a black hole, might not be found even by a Tier 6 emperor. Now back inside Gong Miaoi's body, he sought an opportunity. Purple thunder sealed the cracks in the 9-layer space, but it couldn't stop Jian Wushuang. When he couldn't be found, Kuan Tai secretly attacked Luo Chuan, and a purple thunder struck directly on Luo Chuan's forehead. Mistake! With just this simple word, Kuan Tai didn't say anything more. This time it was all because of Luo Chuan, the jinx. Otherwise, so many brothers wouldn't have died. Having a bit of the origin shattered by him was nothing. However, Luo Chuan couldn't endure this humiliation. Glaring at Kuan Tai, this matter wasn't over. He noted it down not only on Kuan Tai but also on the crown prince Luo Sha. If he achieved the heavenly Tao in the future, he would surely wipe away this shame. Now what? Gong Miaoi, using blood-red lines to protect the surroundings, asked Jian Wushuang inside her. On the Bai Junwang's side, things were a bit frustrating. Even a Tier 5 top-level emperor was something he couldn't kill. When he used a bit more power, his divine body and physical body started to collapse. Jian Wushuang, through the space, looked towards the outside, contemplating. He could see it now. Killing the fourth prince who had arrived wouldn't be of much use. It might not even catch the attention of the crown prince. Let's leave first. Jian Wushuang sighed. This time it would have to end like this. Continuing the fight would only be detrimental to him. The Tier 5 Emperor was extraordinary. Gong Miaoi and Bai Junwang couldn't hold him back, or else he could have fought a bit longer. Hearing Jian Wushuang's decision to retreat, Gong Miaoi was quite relieved. She never wanted to linger in this place anyway. Although Bai Junwang was very unwilling, he had no choice but to leave first. Facing the purple thunderstorm, leaving wasn't an easy task. Jian Wushuang quietly transmitted to Bai Junwang. You follow Gong Miaoi and leave first. I'll hold them back. Remember to keep an eye on her. Swish. 6 avatars along with the main body. 7 Emperor-level combat powers. Now, his avatars also possess the power of a Tier 4 Emperor, combined with a set of supreme innate treasures and the power of all things, making them comparable to top-level Tier 4 Emperors. The avatars went to distract the other Emperors, while the main body faced off against the Tier 4 Emperor. Kuan-Tai saw Jian Wushuang reappear and immediately unleashed his full aura, charging towards him. Humph! Jian Wushuang's figure twisted, escaping in the opposite direction of Gong Miaoi's retreat. Do you think you can escape? Kuan-Tai sneered as he caught up, the radiance of the purple thunderstorm intensifying. That was an eternal treasure. A purple spear pierced through the void, causing a tidal wave of billions of overturned seas. The reason a Tier 5 Emperor was significantly stronger than a Tier 4 Emperor was the ability to control a complete eternal treasure. In the realm of the origin source Tao, Kuan-Tai was just an ordinary Tier 5 Emperor, and his spatial origin was nothing special compared to Jian Wushuang. It was solely due to the eternal treasure that his combat strength reached the top level of the 5th tier. Faced with the purple spear emanating thunder, Jian Wushuang didn't dare to block it. The power was too overwhelming. Even a slight touch could lead to his demise. The divine body was diminishing rapidly, now less than 20,000 times its original size. Against the eternal treasure, this divine body was insufficient, forcing his avatar to step forward and face certain death. Pucci! The spear pierced through Jian Wushuang's avatar as if it were tofu, unable to offer any resistance. Heaven's punishment! Before the avatar shattered completely, a towering giant sword emerged from the depths of the sea, intercepting the spear. Kuan-Tai was stunned. He hadn't expected that the Tier 4 Emperor before him could withstand the eternal treasure. This was beyond his expectations. Seizing the still vibrating spear, he easily broke through the Heaven's Punishment sword strike with a casual move. However, this delay allowed Gong Miaoi to escape a considerable distance. What? Kuan-Tai was astonished. Even his thunderous space was broken. Without caring about anything else, Gong Miaoi and Bai Junwang fled with urgency. Purple thunder, bound by blood-red lines, twisted like serpents. Eternal treasure? A top-level eternal treasure. Luo Chuan, observing from a distance, exclaimed. His knowledge was extensive, having witnessed his master use a top-level eternal treasure in the past. Typically, only Tier 6 Emperors possessed such high-quality eternal treasures. Obtaining an eternal treasure is not an easy feat for an ordinary Tier 5 Emperor without a background. Warriors like Kuan-Tai, after years of countless battles and significant achievements, were granted an eternal treasure. The eternal treasures used by regular Tier 5 Emperors are usually of common quality. Higher-grade eternal treasures are not available for sale. Even in auctions like those held by the Heavenly Court, they rarely make an appearance. And if they do, their prices are exorbitant. Not to mention the top-tier eternal treasures, which are seldom possessed by Tier 6 Emperors. The appearance of such treasures often leads to clashes among Tier 6 veterans eager to seize them. At such times, Tier 5 Emperors become inconspicuous. Not only did Kuan-Tai covet this opportunity, but at this moment Luo Chuan also cast aside everything. He unleashed 12-fold strength, swiftly maneuvered, and headed straight for Gong Miaoi and Bai Junwang. He didn't spare a glance for Jian Wushuang. Revenge could wait. Opportunities like these were rare. If not seized now, one might regret it for a lifetime. As Kuan-Tai had said to Luo Chuan, what they didn't possess, they had to strive to obtain. Right now, it required giving it their all, and with maximum effort, success was within reach. 2 Tier 4 peak-level emperors couldn't stop him. The exquisite eternal treasure was within easy reach. What a fool! Jian Wushuang gritted his teeth, eager to unleash a barrage of curses. That purple thunder didn't even require the use of an eternal treasure. Couldn't they just fly out slowly? Why go to the extent of using the bloodfall crystal to rupture the space? Now things were different. Targeted by that Tier 5 emperor, Jian Wushuang was in no immediate danger. However, Gong Miaoyi was the most significant gain of this journey and couldn't be abandoned. Boom! 9 heavens punishment swords surged from the depths of the sea, directly blocking Kuan Tai's path. Facing the heavens punishment swords, Kuan Tai erupted in fury. He hadn't expected Jian Wushuang to dare to intervene. If he wasn't hindered, Jian Wushuang could have escaped. Jian Wushuang sneered and said, "You want to leave without killing me?" As he spoke, a myriad of sword illusions emerged behind him. Supreme Technique Formation, Immortal Trap Trial. The current Immortal Trap Formation was no longer considered basic. Jian Wushuang had improved it significantly from start to finish, making it quite usable. Having the strength of an emperor, he had not focused much on cultivating sword techniques. He hadn't created any sword-related Ultimate Supreme techniques himself. The Ultimate Supreme techniques, the 7th level of the Sword Dao, the Heaven's Punishment Sword, though at its peak, had a power that, among emperors, could only be considered average. Eliminating some Tier 4 opponents was challenging. Now, his divine body and physical form were more potent than his sword techniques. However, facing a Tier 5 emperor, he didn't dare to engage in close combat. With his divine body currently unstable, he feared it might not withstand a close-range attack. This immortal entanglement formation was suitable for dealing with a Tier 5 emperor. Could trap the opponent, buying time for Gong Miaoyi and Bai Junwang. The phantom swords filled the sky, forming countless trails. 9.8 million. Each sword could annihilate an emperor. This was the limit of the ultimate Dao. Go! Jian Wushuang pointed his finger, shouting, "Immortal Trap!" 9.8 million swords erupted with unparalleled sword chi, gradually forming a hexagonal, 88-sided sword formation, trapping Kuan Tai within. The sword chi inside boiled, but harming Kuan Tai was still improbable. The upper limit was there. The 7th layer of the ultimate Dao could be combined, but the power was limited. Critical was that he didn't combine Dao. A singular sword Dao reaching this level during the Dao Lord realm was already the limit. Even Hu Qing, coming down from the Grave God Mountain, would find it challenging to kill a Tier 4 emperor, not to mention confronting a Tier 5 one. This immortal trap formation could easily strangle a Tier 4 emperor. As Dao Lord advanced to this level, even Qixin would have to show off. Unfortunately, good times didn't last. The opponent was, after all, a Tier 5 emperor. With a roar, Kuan Tai raised his single hand, and a purple thunder burst from his palm, directly splitting the vast sea millions of miles deep. In the dim underwater world, the outer sky became visible. This commotion alarmed the surrounding powerful beings, even though the immortal trap formation remained unbroken. Jian Wushuang held on desperately. Thunder flickered, the sword shadows dimmed, and the powerful sword chi erupted became chaotic. Petty skills, and you think you can trap me? Kuan Tai once again thrust his palm. At the moment the immortal trap formation broke, a fist condensed into a singularity, broke through the shattered formation, and thundered towards Jian Wushuang. This fist had no shadow, no aura. It was just a pure point. Jian Wushuang was shocked, attempting to retreat but had no time. The Candle Dragon inner armor instantly condensed on his chest, and the Candle Dragon wings enveloped him. He didn't hesitate to activate the Beast God domain, causing his divine body to once again increase to 30,000-fold. Boom! Upon contact with Jian Wushuang, that singularity erupted instantly. Starting weakly, the explosion became boundless. The shocking burst made Jian Wushuang retreat 1,000,000 miles, hindered by the resistance of the seawater. Despite the double protection of Candle Dragon wings and Candle Dragon inner armor, Jian Wushuang's physical body shattered repeatedly before reconstituting. The 30,000-fold divine body withstood this blow, although the inner armor and wings were reduced to an extremely weak state, and the divine body suffered severe damage, plummeting to below 10,000-fold. Fortunately, the extreme Tao origin source was transforming into the sea, and this punch hadn't harmed his origin source yet. Gong Miaoyi and Bai Junwang, who were escaping in the distance, also noticed the situation. Bai Junwang's face changed, turning to Gong Miaoyi with a cold voice. "If you dare to play tricks again, one will definitely kill you." Just as Gong Miaoyi voluntarily revealed her eternal treasure, Bai Junwang sensed that something was amiss. Indeed, the other party was not an ignorant fool. At a glance, they discerned the power of the eternal treasure. While it wasn't apparent during the earlier confrontation, breaking through the purple thunder and tearing through space with a force-based technique indicated either a significantly superior strength or possession of a rare treasure. Gong Miaoyi fell into the latter category, directly exposing the formidable might of the Bloodfall crystal. Humph. For now, let's think about how to escape since Jian Wushuang is dead. Despite the lack of expression on Gong Miaoyi's face, there was a hint of excitement in her heart. The clash of titans had eased her tension. However, she couldn't afford to be too complacent. If Jian Wushuang truly fell, it would be troublesome for her. At that moment, Bai Junwang wouldn't intervene to stop Kuan-Tai on her behalf. Seeing Jian Wushuang determinedly obstruct Kuan-Tai, a fleeting glint appeared in Gong Miaoyi's eyes, but it quickly dissipated. Jian Wushuang wasn't doing it for her. It was for a greater benefit, for the origin source within her body. Although both were maintaining their speed, Bai Junwang couldn't help but feel uneasy. Despite knowing Jian Wushuang's capabilities, facing a Tier 5 emperor was no trivial matter. What if Jian Wushuang fell? Even though the origin source had been refined for him, he was unwilling to give up on such a powerful ally as Jian Wushuang. "You go ahead. I'll help Jian Wushuang." Bai Junwang made up his mind. The moment he spoke, Jian Wushuang's voice echoed in their ears. "Don't mind me. Go to the Black Demon Sea. There. The space is chaotic, and you'll be safe wherever you go." Jian Wushuang's voice sounded hoarse, indicating that he had sustained severe injuries. The formidable physical body indeed made a significant impact. At least this time, the origin source was unharmed, and with the origin source intact, anything was possible. While the physical body continued to recover, the divine body required treasures. The godstones from before, exchanged for treasures upon leaving Great Xia, and obtained a fair share from that old lady before setting out, were all swallowed without considering whether they could be consumed. The boundless divine body, like a devouring behemoth, constantly digested and fused. The divine body began to rise. Sensing Jian Wushuang's aura rising, Bai Junwang gritted his teeth and had no choice but to leave first. He then transmitted a message to Jian Wushuang. "Kid, don't you dare die. Hee. Keep an eye on Gong Miaoyi. If she runs away, I'll definitely take your life." Jian Wushuang self-mockingly smiled. It wasn't easy for him to die, at least not at the hands of this Tier 5 emperor before him. If he could be killed by this emperor, he wouldn't bother protecting Gong Miaoyi. Compared to his own life, nothing else mattered. "You're not dead yet." Kuan-Tai's expression had shifted from surprise to a feeling of incredulity. A seemingly Tier 4 emperor had first trapped him and then withstood a punch at full strength without dying. Jian Wushuang revealed only his eyes, enveloped in black armor, and sneered. "Trying to kill me? Not that easy." One thought. Instantly, thought power surged. The sea trembled. Universe. Buzz. The swirling sea transformed into a vortex, where fish and shrimp resembled stars, and the vortex was the universe. Kuan-Tai's eyes contracted to a point, witnessing this technique for the first time. The space within billions of miles solidified, merging the original 9 layers into one. On both sides of the vortex, 2 colossal stars emerged. One icy cold, the other scorching hot. The Tao of all things. The Tao gives birth to one, one gives birth to 2. These 2 are the 2 extremes. The two extremes give birth to four images. Continuously evolving, the universe was born. Jian Wushuang's understanding of the extreme Tao was profound now, no longer vague as before, only perceiving the one-thought universe as a domain. He preferred to believe that this universe truly existed. Perhaps not at this specific moment, but in the future, this universe would be real. Just like the starry sky he set out for years ago, a star eventually transformed into a planet of life. From that ancient giant, it evolved into a race. The giant with a stone axe like him. Both were great pioneers. The former opened up a tribe. He wanted to open up a universe, even open up a stretch of the starry sky. He wanted to overlook all the races throughout eternity. From the beginning of time to its end, everything must be under his rule. Today, I want to see how strong a Tier 5 emperor truly is. Jian Wushuang was somewhat manic. It had been a long time since he went all out in a battle. Then he muttered softly, "Let's also see how strong I am." Boom! The forces of the universe converged within Jian Wushuang. A primordial longsword appeared in his hand, much like the ultimate pillar of sword Tao standing in the origin source sea. All paths, all Tao, converged into one sword strike. Suppress! On a whim, Jian Wushuang actually wanted to suppress and kill this Tier 5 emperor. He himself didn't know where he got the courage. But when this word was uttered, Kuan-Tai started to panic. "Luo Chuan, go intercept those two." Kuan-Tai took a deep breath. He knew that this time he probably wouldn't have the chance to pursue personally. In the upcoming battle, he might even face the possibility of falling. Luo Chuan hesitated. He wanted to intercept, but he didn't have the strength for it. What level was Luo Chuan at now? Although he didn't exert his full strength when fighting Jian Wushuang in a real fight, he could only barely hold off a peak-level Tier 4. Gong Miaoi possessed an extraordinary eternal treasure. He wasn't a match for her. If he failed to intercept properly, he might end up sacrificing himself. Bai Junwang's strength was ferocious. He couldn't be stopped. With these two combined, even a regular Tier 5 emperor wouldn't be able to stop them. There was no way out now. Call for reinforcements. Luo Chuan resigned. But he wouldn't call the troops from the Mo Luo army. He had already sent a message to his master. A Tier 6 peak-level emperor traveling from Turtle Spirit Island to here wouldn't take much time. Moreover, the sensing ability of a Tier 6 emperor was astonishing. As long as the escape wasn't too far, he could trace the opponent based on spatial traces. Seeing Luo Chuan unmoved, Kuan-Tai understood. Although Luo Chuan was envious, he hadn't lost his mind. But Kuan-Tai was different. He came from humble beginnings, and he wasn't willing to give up. If he obtained the extraordinary eternal treasure, he could retire directly. No need to serve as a dog for Mo Luo Nation anymore. With the treasure in hand, he could go far away, abandoning everything: family, sect, disciples, and descendants. Everything could be forsaken. His current origin source realm was just an ordinary Tier 5 emperor. If he could obtain an extraordinary eternal treasure and comprehend the patterns within it, he could elevate his origin source, perhaps even reaching the pinnacle of the Tier 5. With the addition of the treasure, he would possess peak combat power. As long as a Tier 6 emperor didn't appear, he would be invincible. No longer relying on others, he himself would be the support. He was determined. Facing Jian Wushuang, Kuan-Tai began to burn his origin source, even burning his divine body. Directly burning 1%, doubling his strength. Jian Wushuang's expression also changed. He was ready to sacrifice everything. To deal with a Tao Lord like him, burning the origin source and divine body. "You've forced me to this point. I have to admit you're quite extraordinary." Kuan-Tai spoke each word slowly, and his strength continued to climb. Jian Wushuang's realm was now beyond the discernment of even a Tier 5 emperor. Even a Tier 6 emperor could only make a rough estimation. Although Kuan-Tai couldn't discern Jian Wushuang's realm, he understood that at most Jian Wushuang was only a peak-level Tier 4 emperor, not yet a Tier 5 emperor. Facing a top-level Tier 5 emperor, he forced him to burn his origin source and divine body, which was indeed extraordinary. Perhaps only the legendary inheritors could achieve such feats. Kuan-Tai had encountered extraordinary emperors in the Earth realm before. The Crown Prince Luosha was quite remarkable, being able to contend with ordinary Tier 5 emperors at the limits of Tier 4. That was already quite extraordinary. However, Jian Wushuang far surpassed Luosha. He hadn't even reached the limit of Dao Lord yet. The limit of Dao Lord required his Sword Dao and Extreme Dao to reach the 9th level. Currently, he could already engage in battle with a top-level Tier 5 Emperor and force him to burn his origin source and divine body. Although a significant reason for this was Kuan-Tai's reluctance to fight him and the desire to pursue Gong Miaoi and Bai Junwang, it also indicated that Kuan-Tai posed no immediate threat to him. Otherwise, Jian Wushuang could have directly killed him. Jian Wushuang stood with his hands clasped, calmly uttering a single word, "Please." The character for restrain had already transformed into a tangible form. He was inviting Kuan-Tai into the vortex. The swirling vortex of the swirling sea was pitch black, resembling a gap in the world. The more Jian Wushuang looked, the more he resembled a black hole. This indicated that he was not far from the realm of a black hole. When he just emerged, his sword was trembling, showing its connection to the Tao of the sword. This time, the battle was perhaps the dual catalyst for his breakthrough in Sword Dao and the Extreme Dao. Suppress. Jian Wushuang suddenly made a move, without any hesitation. In his Avn universe, he had sufficient confidence, with his divine body ascending and the origin source burning. It wasn't only others who could burn, he could too. Moreover, he directly burned 30%. With the blessing of his universe, his strength had already multiplied several times, and with the burning of the origin source, his combat power directly approached that of Tier 5 Emperor. Though the enemy was formidable, they were within his universe. The ancient long sword in his hand, simple and unadorned, resembled a dragon as it roared towards Kuan-Tai. Kuan-Tai raised an eyebrow, surprised that Jian Wushuang would take the initiative, aligning with his intentions. Accompanied by the thrust of a spear made of purple thunder. The purple thunder serpent met the dragon. The struggle of their divine forms represented their clash. The dragon moved gracefully, like a startled swan, resembling a wandering dragon. Its killing power became even more formidable, while the purple thunder serpent was exceedingly fierce, with lightning bolts suppressing the dragon, forcing it to evade in all directions. The might of Jian Wushuang's origin source was incredibly powerful. If one path didn't work, there were 2, 3, or even 10,000 paths. Kuan-Tai was dumbfounded, realizing that the battle of spell figures was a competition of origin source. He had never imagined that Jian Wushuang's origin source would be so powerful. This is an illusion. Kuan-Tai still didn't believe it, holding his spear to break the illusion and charging straight ahead. It seemed that these seasoned warriors, who often engaged in battles, liked to use spears. The Grand Yen Immortals encountered at Great Desolate Wilderness were similar. But now, he faced a Tier 5 Emperor, a pinnacle existence in the original universe. Although the Emperors in the 4 Great Secret Realms were relatively weaker, they had many treasures. The purple spear in Kuan-Tai's hand pierced, prodded, and swept away, breaking one by one through Jian Wushuang's illusions. Kuan-Tai, who hadn't had time to be surprised, realized that these illusions were real. Fortunately, their power was average and he could still sweep through them. With so many illusions to deal with, Jian Wushuang's origin source was also weakening, achieving only the effect of blocking. It was enough. As long as he could delay them and allow Gong Miaoi and Bai Junwang to escape, it would be sufficient. He had no intention of directly confronting Kuan-Tai. Kuan-Tai fought fiercely within the dragon, engaging in close combat. Jian Wushuang felt a bit itchy watching this. These dragons wouldn't hold out for long. Under the rapid decline of his abundant origin source, this method was not profitable. If he continued to kill like this, his origin source would quickly be depleted. Looking at Kuan-Tai, who was getting more and more excited, Jian Wushuang thought of his physical body, the original skeleton he had chosen. That was the real him, the limit of the physical body, refined 10 times, with even the origin source injected into the bones. Today, he would test the power of his physical body to see how strong it really was. There was also his divine body, burning and already approaching 30,000-fold. The basic divine body was 15,000-fold, almost doubling. With a divine body of 30,000-fold, if stable, it might be possible to fight a Tier 5 emperor. Many Tier 5 emperors also had divine bodies around 30,000-fold. Moving up, the required treasures were not for sale. They had to be exchanged with equivalent value, a cost beyond the means of ordinary people. But to become more powerful, a Tier 6 emperor couldn't follow the path of origin source in the Great Tao. They would all lean towards the divine body route, and cultivating dual forces enhanced their survival capabilities. While the origin source diminished rapidly, the divine body continued to solidify. The sword dragon could no longer resist. Jian Wushuang took a step back and reappeared at the edge of the one-thought universe. Here, his speed increased even more. He held the long sword, and the eye of the candle dragon on his forehead flickered. Beast God Domain. Not only did it amplify his divine body, but the power of the candle dragon eye was also formidable. The towering beast god crawled out of the vortex. Jian Wushuang retracted the sword, and his physical body transformed into its original form. It was the appearance of a special life form with smooth and transparent skin, ear grooves, slender eyes, a high nose, and pale red lips. Completely white, smooth-headed without a strand of hair. Jian Wushuang took a step forward and once again approached Kuan-Tai. His body was now covered in black armor and candle dragon wings. Today, let me show you what it looks like when the physical body reaches its limit. As he spoke, the beast god that crawled out of the vortex roared. Candle dragon. Today, he would completely merge the origin source into the beast god weapon and comprehend it thoroughly. Kuan-Tai also smiled, putting away the spear in his hand. Hand-to-hand combat. Whoosh! As a Tier 5 emperor and a general of the Mo Luo nation, with a divine body amplification of 25,000-fold and having cultivated a divine body supreme technique that could reach around 30,000-fold, he barely met the normal standard for a Tier 5 emperor. Even if a Tier 5 emperor were extremely poor, investing all resources in the origin source path could still push the divine body to over 20,000-fold. Clearly, Kuan-Tai had done just that. However, his origin source was too weak, significantly lagging behind Jian Wushuang. A Tier 5 emperor couldn't compete with a Tao lord in spatial ability. If he knew, he would probably be infuriated. Jian Wushuang's arms swayed slightly. Who didn't have a unique technique? Heavenly demon art. This technique was quite famous, and Kuan-Tai recognized it. 6 arms. Kuan-Tai breathed a sigh of relief, but next, he was dumbfounded. Whether his eyes were playing tricks on him or not, he saw countless arms behind Jian Wushuang. Those were the 1,000-armed guanyin of the Buddhist sect. It was a supreme technique from the Buddha realm, seemingly created by an extraordinary Buddha. Jian Wushuang didn't know who it was, but he had seen the head monk use it. After a bit of research, he found that it complemented the heavenly demon technique quite well. 8-armed heavenly demon. 8 arms, each controlling a palm, radiating 8 dazzling rays of light. The sun and moon alternated. The demonic energy surged. His arms transformed behind him, becoming a myriad of hands. Yet now he practiced demonic techniques, no longer the guanyin with 1,000 hands. It was more akin to a 1,000-legged centipede. Such distinctions were inconsequential. The truly powerful cared not for the boundaries between righteousness and demonic paths. In strength, weakness was the greatest evil. In strength, too, lay the greatest evil. To walk the righteous path, one should not exist in this realm. Exhale. The heavenly demon technique reached its pinnacle. 1,000 hands only enhanced his combat power. The 8-armed heavenly demon was what truly augmented his divine form. Now, his divine form had been amplified to 35,000-fold its original power. Exceeding his limits, the Tao Lord could achieve, at most, a 30,000-fold enhancement of his divine form. He managed to break through even further due to the robustness of his physical body, capable of withstanding the strain. The origin source operated similarly. The strength of the divine form determined its richness. Today, Jian Wushuang stood firm in his convictions, unwavering from his initial plans. The journey from leaving the Great Sea region, entering the great desolate wilderness, witnessing the ancient corpse's vast army, feeling the immense aura of the ancient era, later encountering the Qixin Temple and the original planets. His understanding grew continually, progressing to a new comprehension of divine form, origin source, and physical body. It was from this awareness that he formulated his plans. Leaving the Great Sea region marked his transformation from a Yen immortal to a grand Yen immortal. Now, from a Tao lord to an emperor, it would be witnessed by the Qixin Temple. Boom! His aura erupted once again. The 8-arm heavenly demon transformed into the 10-arm heavenly demon. The phantom figure continued to ascend. 36. 000 fold. 37. 000 fold. The final value settled at 40,000 fold. If it were the 12-armed heavenly demon, it might have reached an astonishing 50,000 fold. The 12-armed heavenly demon is the complete form of the heavenly demon. Jian Wushuang was genuinely afraid that his current physical body might not withstand it. With a slight movement of his arms, he could hear the crisp sound of bones. 40,000-fold divine body. It manifested on his Tao Lord body. Although the basic divine body was only 15,000-fold times, the amplification from the beast god domain was significant. Under the burning state, the basic divine body was amplified to 20,000-fold, followed by the beast god domain directly amplifying it to 30,000-fold. Adding the amplification from his supreme technique, it reached 40,000-fold. The amplification of the beast god weapon included the amplification of the divine body. Normally, without burning, he could increase it by over 10,000 times with the beast god weapon. This time, it only increased by 10,000 times, indicating that the powerful divine body weakened the amplification. Although it was a reduction, it also indicated that the amplification of the beast god weapon and the supreme technique did not overlap. It was equivalent to amplifying twice. There were treasures that could amplify the divine body, and quite a few of them, but they overlapped with the supreme technique, so there were very few that could be amplified. The 40,000-fold divine body caused Jian Wushuang's entire body to undergo a transformation. The body's structure was approaching its limit. A black hole. Now Jian Wushuang felt that his physical body was like a black hole. In an instant, both of them moved. When powerful beings clashed, especially in hand-to-hand combat, even a slight opportunity was enough to inflict serious injuries on the opponent. Jian Wushuang's every palm or fist was unbelievably fast. Within the blink of an eye, he could unleash 1,000,000 punches. 10 arms meant 10 million punches in one go. The full force of a punch from a 40,000-fold divine body was formidable, beyond what a Tier 4 emperor could withstand. How can his divine body be so strong? Kuan-Tai struggled to defend. As a Tier 5 emperor, he could barely achieve a divine body 40,000-fold, even with the burning of the divine body. Even if the opponent also burned their divine body, it shouldn't be this powerful. The origin source was already remarkable, and the divine body was still so powerful. Could he have encountered a successor? In recent years, there had been too much information about successors, and for a moment, Kuan-Tai could only think along those lines. If it was indeed a successor, things would become tricky. On one side was a tremendous opportunity and an extraordinary eternal treasure. On the other side was a mysterious emperor with such incredible strength, clearly not a fifth-order emperor, yet possessing such formidable combat power. A dilemma. Ha! However, Jian Wushuang fought more fiercely as the battle progressed, relishing the feeling of landing blows directly on flesh, a sensation he hadn't experienced in a long time. Boom! Just as he landed a punch on the opponent, Kuan-Tai retaliated with a knee strike, distorting Jian Wushuang's facial features. The blood that flowed out was golden, containing immense power. In the midst of the reckless onslaught, Jian Wushuang couldn't care less about the consequences. "You lunatic!" Kuan-Tai muttered under his breath. With a thought, Gong Miaoyi and Bai Junwang had already escaped beyond his perception range. Even Kuan-Tai, who was stronger than him, would be too late to pursue them now. Jian Wushuang revealed a slight smile, holding his ground. Despite the strength of his divine body, there was a significant weakness in divine power. Without the fusion of the great Tao, the disparity in power levels was too vast. Battered by Kuan-Tai, his divine body had weakened to 30,000-fold, and the depletion was severe. On Kuan-Tai's side, things weren't any better. His physical body was torn apart. The only thing he wore, a prehistoric supreme treasure armor, was now shattered. Jian Wushuang had the candle dragon armor, which alleviated a significant amount of impact. As for the tatters, they weren't so easily resolved. In ancient times, even the beast god weapon hadn't been damaged, only decomposed. Breaking the beast god weapon seemed an impossible feat in the current world. People have left. Do you still want to continue this fight? Kuan-Tai's voice trembled. This time he suffered a major loss. No treasure gained, and he was injured. Jian Wushuang sneered. People haven't left. Don't believe me? Look. He pointed behind Kuan-Tai. The two temporarily halted their battle. Just as Kuan-Tai had a fleeting thought and turned to look behind, a sudden sharp pain struck his head, as if someone had hit him with a stick. The damage wasn't severe, but it appeared highly disrespectful to onlookers, especially in the presence of dozens of emperors, many of whom were Kuan-Tai's subordinates. This, Luo Chuan couldn't help but almost burst into laughter, suppressing the urge to laugh. In front of Kuan-Tai he had to give some face, but once he left here, he had to spread this matter to the Mo Luo kingdom. Let everyone know that a fourth-tier emperor in front of Kuan-Tai had slapped him hard on the head. Jian Wushuang was also bold, slapping and then running away. Appearing at the edge of the one-thought universe, he revealed a sly smile to everyone. He didn't care to kill these people, but he wouldn't let them off easily either. One-thought universe. Jian Wushuang shouted loudly, "Explode!" Buzz. Kuan-Tai, who had just realized what happened, erupted in anger, his aura soaring again. Today he had to kill Jian Wushuang. But just as he was about to move, he found that the vortex had become extremely violent. In the next moment, a powerful suction swept through billions of miles around, turning everything upside down. Facing the turbulent seawater, Kuan-Tai endured the resistance and rushed toward Jian Wushuang. But at this point, it was already too late. Jian Wushuang wanted to leave, and a Tier 5 emperor couldn't stop him. All that was left behind was a clone. Just as Kuan-Tai touched this clone, it instantly exploded. The explosive force was small, but it sprayed a black ink that stained Kuan-Tai all over. It was the ink of a sea monster, the ink of the 8-armed Sea King. It was challenging to remove and required the saliva of a Sea King to clean. This was something Jian Wushuang obtained when he killed sea monsters. Unexpectedly, it came in handy now, disgustingly affecting Kuan-Tai. They returned in defeat. No, this time they not only lost their feathers but also ended up in a sorry state. Kuan-Tai led his people to leave first, and Luo Chuan informed his master, Turtle Spirit Island Lord, that there was no need for the members of the demon army to stay. It would only bring shame. As the time for a cup of tea passed, a massive turtle shell appeared. Even before its arrival, the spiritual consciousness had descended. On the enormous turtle shell, there was a human face with kind and benevolent features. Luo Chuan quickly bowed respectfully. Master, there was no need for him to explain in detail. The island lord of Turtle Island, whose name was Gui Ling, manipulated the space of heaven and earth, dividing and examining it carefully. Come back with me. Island Lord Gui Ling's voice carried great authority. Jian Wushuang and the others had already been noted, but with the space damaged, it was impossible to find many clues. However, supreme eternal treasures were scrutinized carefully. The Bloodfall Crystal, an ancient cave mansion. These needed further investigation. Such powerful eternal treasures couldn't be so simple. Luo Chuan dared not refute and followed the turtle shell back. Meanwhile, Island Lord Gui Ling's true form stayed behind. Except for him, someone else had arrived here. The newcomer was a Tier 5 emperor, leaving no mark in ancient times, and without any name in the 4 great secret realms. However, his strength made even Tier 6 emperors bow their heads. Island Lord, An inheritor. Island Lord Guiling's tiny eyes flickered. The ancient cave mansion was evidently not as simple as Jian Wushuang and the others had imagined. The top-notch inheritors among them all mobilized. Even Kuan-Tai, who had left, was unwilling. When he returned to Turtle Spirit Island and was contemplating whether to report the matter, he learned that the eldest prince, Luo Sha, had already made a breakthrough, reaching Tier 5. Moreover, upon emerging from seclusion, he had reached the peak of the Tier 5. Not hesitating any further, Kuan-Tai directly reported the matter. Luo Sha frowned. The Lord of Turtle Spirit Island had gone, and he didn't dare to contend for it. But with the reputation of the Mo Luo nation, how could he not go? He immediately gathered a large army and set out to battle in the Redwood Sea region. In the Black Demon Sea, the world sank. On a desolate small island, the bones of sea monsters covered the ground. The sky was shrouded in ominous dark clouds hanging low, seeming as if you could touch them by raising your head, but in reality, they were thousands of meters above the ground. The water in the sea turned black under the gloomy clouds. That's how the Black Demon Sea got its name. Jian Wushuang and the other two sat cross-legged on the broken mountain of the small island, each recovering their strength. Bai Junwang was doing fine. He had an abundance of origin source, but his divine body and physical body were too weak. Fortunately, Gong Miaoi had obtained treasures left for him by Gong Yun in the mansion. Several 100 billion godstones accumulated by the Stellar Pavilion over countless years. Some of them belonged to other powerful beings who had stored their treasures here. Now, all of it had been taken by Junwang to enhance his physical and divine bodies. Originally, Bai Junwang intended to wait for Shenling to bestow him with a divine body. However, he had just received earth-shattering news. The divine body and the physical form both exist, but he needs to retrieve them himself, and as for their location, it's all determined by fate. This statement made Jian Wushuang sneer for quite a while. Gong Miaoi, on the other hand, used all her time to enhance her control over the Bloodfall crystal, resulting in a noticeable improvement in her strength. In order to suppress her, Bai Junwang had to quickly enhance his own strength. Jian Wushuang recovered quickly, and a trace of his consciousness clone remained long-term within Gong Miaoi, comprehending the meaning of ultimate Tao within it, especially the word suppress. The profound meaning contained within it was deep. Sword Tao. Jian Wushuang carefully grasped the insights. He unexpectedly sensed the sword intent from Gong Miaoi's origin source, even though she wasn't a practitioner of Sword Tao. The spatial origin source clearly contained the illusions. How could there be a Sword Tao origin source in Gong Miaoi's origin source? The only plausible explanation would probably be that her father was a Sword Tao expert, at least an emperor. That would make sense. He didn't bother with all that, just focused on comprehending. Just a single word, suppress, allowed him to grasp many pure Sword Tao origin sources. For the 8th level of the ultimate Sword Tao, there was finally a faint understanding. After the Heaven's Punishment Sword Strike, it was Mighty Suppression. After Mighty Suppression, what comes next? Jian Wushuang shook his head. He hadn't figured out suppress yet, so he couldn't look too far ahead. This time in Cultivation was truly immersive. The three of them progressed together, unaware that they had spent 1,000 years cultivating on this deserted island. They paid no attention to anything outside. Being top-tier experts, closing in for 1,000,000 or even 1,000,000,000 years at a time was not considered long. Many emperors, during a crucial seclusion, could span several epochs. Of course, most of them utilized time acceleration, just like Jian Wushuang. The time in the time house multiplied by 1,000 wasn't too expensive. Outside, a millennium could be 1,000,000 years inside, and 1,000,000 years of cultivation might just be a moment of enlightenment, making it feel like no significant time had passed. During this time outside, however, there were earth-shattering changes. Mo Luff's country launched a massive attack, flattening Redwood Island, annihilating Stellar Pavilion, and imprisoning all the high-ranking officials. Dozens of Tier 5 emperors stationed in the swirling sea. The island lord of Turtle Spirit Island personally sat in command. Apart from these people, inheritors arrived. Zhen Wuyang even had a great battle with the island lord Guiling. That ancient cave mansion was shattered, indicating its significant involvement. It wasn't just because of the top-notch eternal treasures. Though rare, top-notch eternal treasures weren't enough to attract inheritors, especially several of them at once. In the end, both sides agreed to issue a wanted notice for Gong Miaoi and two other mysterious emperors. They were searching for the whereabouts of the Bloodfall crystal. In the swirling sea, several palaces faced each other from a distance. While they were referred to as representatives of two powerful factions, aside from the Island Lord of Turtle Spirit, there were also powerful figures from Mo Luff's country. Although the Grand Elder didn't come, they sent several Tier 5 experts, indicating their stance. On the side of the inheritors, besides Jin Wuyang, there were also Jian Wushuang's familiar acquaintances, Tongtian Buddha, and Wanderer Qishui. Before entering the Qishan Temple, they were all at the top level Tier 4. Only Qishui Traveler reached the peak level of Tier 4. And now, all three were Tier 5 peak level experts. Their strength was extraordinary. One Jin Wuyang alone could compete with a Tier 6 peak level expert like the Island Lord of Turtle Spirit Island. Although the Guiling had some reservations in terms of real combat power, these three working together made the Guiling truly not an opponent. In the hall where the inheritors gathered, Jin Wuyang sat in the high seat, favored by Jin Ling this time. Jin Ling had informed him in advance about the opportunity here, but realizing that one person couldn't seize it all, he invited Tongtian Buddha and Qishui. Naturally, he was the initiator this time. Brother Jin Wuyang, the three of us are already sufficient. There's no need to look for others. It's just an old guy who has become a king of the beasts. The three of us are more than enough to handle it. Qishui was very confident, but of course he also feared calling in others, which would mean less for each of them. Jin Wuyang considered many factors in his actions. Unlike Qishui, who had been a lone ranger for a long time, he thought about everything. Tongtian Buddha, sitting on the other side, kept smiling without saying a word. He had no objections to this matter. Whatever way they wanted to do it was fine. Among the three, their strengths were quite indistinct. Yet, in terms of opportunities, Tongtian Buddha had the upper hand. He had emerged as the most prominent inheritor by winning the top spot on Grave God Mountain. Having obtained the inheritance of the three main gods of the Qishan Temple on Grave God Mountain, he lacked neither treasures nor secret techniques. This visit could be considered a leisurely outing. Qishui was not lacking either, being born as a special life form with a divine body stronger than the special life forms nurtured in the god's tomb. He possessed a divine body that was already 10,000 times superior from the moment of his appearance. Up until now, what he lacked was treasures and divine body techniques, both of which he found on Grave God Mountain. His divine body soared all the way, his cultivation progressing smoothly. He even acquired the cosmic secret technique for pursuing the divine body path, and now his strength was formidable. On Grave God Mountain, he had become a prominent figure. On the other hand, Jin Wuyang had powerful abilities in various aspects but couldn't break through a certain special aspect. Overall, he was very powerful and excellent inheritor, but if one were to talk about being heaven-defying, he fell short. He did not stand out in any aspect. This was the evaluation given to him by Jin Ling. While competing with Qishui in divine bodies, although Jin Wuyang possessed the divine body of true martial, he only managed to break through to 30,000-fold on Grave God Mountain. Currently, his basic divine body was around 40,000-fold, combined with the divine body's ultimate skill, reaching a maximum of 50,000-fold. In the four great secret realms, this could be considered heaven-defying, but on Grave God Mountain it was merely average. Qishui's basic divine body had surpassed 50,000-fold. This was already the level of a peak-level Tier 6. Tongtian Buddha's spatial origin source had reached the realm of a black hole, possessing a perfect inheritance. He was no longer pursuing anything else and was now dedicated to creating his own secret techniques, following an advanced path. He was destined for the summit in the future. One pursued the divine body, the other followed the orthodox path of the spatial origin source. Jin Wuyang, however, had no clear goal. This opportunity was rare and must not be missed. Otherwise, he would fall far behind others. Fortunately, his current strength still matched that of Tongtian and Qishui. If he didn't strive now, he would end up at the bottom in the future. Also, they embarrassed the cultivators from the Eastern universe. Now, the Grave God Mountain was filled with towering peaks. Fangyu, Qishui, Tongtian, Zhenwuyang, and others were present. But currently, they were the strongest among their group. Even among the younger generation, they didn't fall behind. Especially Hu Qing from the Tongtian Buddha realm, consistently ranked among the top in ultimate Dao Lords, displaying formidable strength. On the Grave God Mountain, numerous talented individuals from the Grand Yen Immortals had gone there over the years. Though the number of ultimate Dao Lords was relatively smaller, it still amounted to over 1,000 when accumulated. They were aware that the future success lay in the hands of these juniors who grasped the ultimate path. They themselves were merely guides and protectors of the Dao. Therefore, they held a high regard for these juniors. Despite the disparity in the origin source, they were unwilling to give up. The road to the pinnacle in the future was not easy. Everything was relative. The ultimate Dao was powerful, but combining Dao could suppress a batch, and reaching the summit was incredibly challenging. For these non-ultimate Dao powerhouses, reaching the summit was difficult, but much simpler than mastering the ultimate Dao. Out of 10,000 ultimate emperors, achieving 5 peak-level experts was considered good. This was with the guidance of the Qishan Temple and the immense resources and efforts invested. Moreover, there were not even 10,000 ultimate emperors available for Qishan Temple to cultivate. That's why they relaxed the conditions, allowing emperors like Zhenwuyang to enter the Grave God Mountain for future considerations. Zhenwuyang, sitting in the main seat of the hall, contemplated for a long time before speaking. Our opponents are not in the open. He couldn't forget Jinling's instructions. Opportunities highly valued even by Jinling and beyond his control. Entering them could lead to one's demise. This was no child's play. On the surface, there was just the Island Lord of Turtle Spirit Island, nothing significant. The three of them combined could easily suppress him. Brother Zhenwuyang, how about this? Tongtian Buddha suggested. We spread the news, inform the people on Grave God Mountain, and notify the entire 4 great secret realms. No matter how many come, our alliance of 3 remains unchanged. Qishui was somewhat unwilling. In doing so, it would likely attract many strong individuals. If the opportunity was significant, the formidable old experts might descend, and then they would have nothing to do. Qishui hastily retorted, absolutely not. If this news spreads, not only the people on Grave God Mountain but also the Divine Temple and Elder Palace will dispatch powerful individuals. Coupled with those indigenous old monsters, how can I compete with them? No, Brother Qishui, you've misunderstood my meaning. Tongtian Buddha paused for a moment, then turned to Zhenwuyang and said, where did this opportunity come from? It was given by Lord Jinling regardless of our decision. We must first inform Lord Jinling. This statement was a gamble on Qishui's part. All 3 individuals had avatars on Grave God Mountain. Delaying could lead to unforeseen changes. After some discussion, they decided to seek the guidance of Lord Jinling. On the other hand, the Turtle Spirit Island Lord, Guiling, was also in a bind. One Zhenwuyang was already causing him a headache, and now 2 more inheritors had arrived, both with formidable strengths. One had a powerful divine body that couldn't be killed, and the other had an origin source connecting to the heavens, surpassing his own realm. He was truly panicking now. The other strong individuals who had been observing from the outside were all summoned by him. The several Tier 6 emperors on the west coast were not highly regarded by Guiling. However, the people in the core sea area, who looked down on the outer sea, not only opposed his invitation but also stood against him. It would be better not to invite them at all. On the west coast, in terms of actual strength, the Turtle Spirit Island Lord naturally ranked first. He had been at the peak level of the Tier 6 for many years. If not for this, the Mo Luo nation's army wouldn't dare to wage war recklessly on the west coast. This was all thanks to the blessing of Turtle Spirit Island. Guiling, this matter is quite simple. Turtle Spirit Island Lord followed the voice and saw a young man with a toad-like face. Of course, he perceived the essence. The person who spoke was undoubtedly an exceptionally handsome young man in white, like jade in the snow. Looking at what seemed like a person but was, in fact, a toad in a stinking ditch on the west coast. No wonder the inhabitants of the inner sea looked down on those from the west coast. They didn't even want to admit their true nature, each considering themselves part of the human race. But now, as everyone sat together, with no distinction between high and low, the Turtle Spirit Island Lord raised his hand and spoke. Brother Tianchan, please continue. Brother Guiling, how do we activate this remnant you mentioned? Tianchan arched his hand. The Turtle Spirit Island Lord felt a bit awkward. This point was well raised. The treasure needed to open the remnant had not been obtained yet. It was the Bloodfall Crystal that Gong Miaoyi was supposed to inherit. Tianchan and the others had gathered enough information. They knew who had taken it and had dispatched people to search everywhere. I'll think, for now, our key is to find the Bloodfall Crystal. Don't worry about the inheritors. Once we have the method to open it, we can enter directly. Without laying a hand on them, we won't offend anyone, and the people from the temple won't have grounds to deal with us. After dealing with the Divine Temple for so many years, they had learned the Divine Temple's ways. The Nalan family's residence was raided because they had touched a forbidden scale, venturing into the sealed Wanzong forest and openly trafficking quotas. Wasn't this practically inviting disaster from the Qishan Temple? Such audacity, so reckless. Their deaths were hardly regrettable. It was the same during the incident in the Heavenly Realm. A peak-level expert, rampaging wantonly, plundering the inheritance of a Tao Lord Inheritor. It was a death wish. Though they were Tier 6 emperors, facing a Tier 5 inheritor, their strengths were comparable. Even if they killed their target, the Qishan Temple wouldn't be foolish enough to seek revenge. It could only mean the inheritor lacked the strength to fend for themselves. If they continued to protect without any danger, how could they achieve anything significant in the future? Tianchan's words served as a wake-up call to the Guiling Island Lord, who later grasped the underlying rationale. As long as they didn't go too far, the Qishan Temple probably wouldn't take action against them. After reaching an agreement, they began dispatching people to search for Gong Miaoyi. They even offered a sky-high reward. Just reporting Gong Miaoyi's location would earn 100 billion godstones. Capturing her could grant the protection of several Tier 6 emperors, countless treasures, and more. This news drove the experts from the outer sea and the western coast mad. Especially upon learning that Gong Miaoyi only possessed the peak strength of Tier 4, all Tier 5 emperors mobilized, and even groups of Tier 4 emperors joined the search for Gong Miaoyi. This event caused a sensation that lasted for a century. The entire outer sea was boiling, and instead of capturing sea monsters, everyone was dreaming of getting rich. Zhang Wuyang and the others, upon learning about it, were furious and cursed loudly. Fortunately, Zhenling also provided assistance, and even the emperors of the Grave God Mountain could go. However, secretly they informed the Elder's Palace. As for the people from the Qishan Temple, strict orders were given not to get involved. They even instructed the temple members to inform all the peak-level experts. Anyone who intervened in this matter would face death. Bai Yi was almost driven to madness. In the past, whenever there were any relics, they would get the best part, while others got the leftovers. Now, not only did they not get the best parts, but they also didn't get any leftovers. How could he lead his people like this? He had to go threatening those peak-level experts himself. After offending people, he didn't gain any benefits. Upon receiving the news, the Elder's Palace directly ordered Wuxia from the Law Enforcement Hall to lead a team. Wuxia was responsible for overseeing the situation, while the others were to compete for the treasures. The main goal was to establish influence in the Earth realm. This time, there was a legitimate reason to make a move. For a while, the entire Western Sea was in chaos as numerous experts rushed in. In the chaos region, the ancestor of Great Xia also took action. The old man with goat horns didn't bring anyone along. Bringing someone would expose weaknesses. He learned about this news inside the Elder's Palace. Wuxia and his team quietly entered the chaos region. Jian Wushuang and others, who were still in seclusion in the Black Demon Sea, were completely unaware of these developments. They were still immersed in their cultivation, billions of miles away from this desolate island. A team of powerful individuals led by a Tier 5 emperor navigated the underwater depths. In the group, A Tier 4 peak-level emperor suggested, "Senior MO, there's an unnamed small island ahead. Why not take a look there?" These people were hastily assembled. Now, a Tier 5 emperor could easily recruit over a dozen Tier 4 peak emperors. After all, although the target they were searching for was a peak-level Tier 4, anyone sought after by so many powerhouses couldn't be an ordinary individual. A common Tier 4 peak-level emperor probably wouldn't stand a chance. There had to be a Tier 5 emperor leading the way for assurance. Even if they were defeated, at least they could survive and potentially profit by selling information. 100 billion godstones. If they could seize this opportunity, each person would gain 100 billion. Add to that the promises of several Tier 6 emperors, and they could dominate the entire Western Sea in the future. Humph. Are you silly or something? Do you think everyone else is a fool, hiding in such an obvious place on the island? Laughter erupted when this statement was made. The leading Tier 5 emperor interrupted. Enough. We're here to find someone, not to play. However, since we've encountered it, let's take a look personally. We can't miss any opportunity. Affirmative. Senior MO. Indeed. Your attention to detail is as fine as silk. The first to voice an opinion, a peak-level Tier 4 expert, sneered inwardly. This was the advantage of formidable strength. Their words conveyed a similar meaning, but the responses they received were worlds apart. If he were Tier 5 emperor, oh, the difference. Naturally, he insisted on personally inspecting the situation. As he burst out of the water, many people mocked him. He didn't mind that. What if the target was indeed on that island? Then he would have achieved a great merit. As he emerged from the water, before the seawater could even fall off him, a powerful aura erupted. It instantly evaporated the seawater, and then, with a burst of crackling sounds, a figure, accompanied by the sound of bursting energy, shot towards the desolate island. Is there someone? Bai Junwang was momentarily stunned, then stood up. He had long ceased his cultivation. Enhancing both his physical body and divine body required treasures, and he had exhausted the countless godstones, each worth billions. His divine body, currently barely breaking through 30,000-fold its original strength, had been further boosted to 50,000-fold through the heavenly demon technique given by Jian Wushuang. It could now rival the power of a Tier 6 emperor. Coupled with the origin source, Bai Junwang could now go toe-to-toe with a Tier 6 emperor. He had been biding his time, holding back his full power since obtaining the origin source. However, he was ambushed and forced to flee, thanks to Jian Wushuang's desperate efforts. Now, with his strength restored to that of a Tier 6 emperor, he was determined to seek revenge on Kuan-Tai. He planned to deal with him personally. Encountering someone new, Bai Junwang's lips curled into an expectant smile. A Tier 4 emperor. Bai Junwang shook his head. As he approached, he found a young man who happened to be quite ugly. Unable to suppress a sigh, Bai Junwang expressed his disappointment. The newcomer, initially surprised, later showed delight. He was genuinely happy to encounter another living being. Having spent years in the Black Demon Sea, this was the first time they had come across a cultivator. The young man first felt joy, then some surprise, and finally furrowed his brows in slight worry. He couldn't discern the other's strength, fearing that he might be a hidden expert in this area. As for whether it was Gong Niawai and the others, he had no idea because he couldn't even see the other person's face clearly. Bai Junwang, on the other hand, was growing impatient. Stared at by an ugly fellow, he felt uncomfortable deep inside. Angrily, he said, "Kid, what are you looking at? Hurry up and get lost, or..." As he spoke, Bai Junwang revealed his appearance. Seeing him, the young man's pupils suddenly shrank, and he took in a sharp breath. "You!" He was so excited that he momentarily forgot about the rumors. Realizing this, he quickly transmitted the information to Senior MO, then forcibly calmed down. Bai Junwang sneered, thinking the other had been frightened. However, he was stunned when he noticed more people approaching from behind. Inside the time pavilion, Jian Wushuang also opened his eyes, sensing a powerful aura drawing near, feeling a bit uneasy. The ultimate Tao had reached the peak of the 7th level. He had a premonition that adding one more word to suppression would allow him to break through. But for some reason, he couldn't decide on the right word. Suppress? Kill? No, Jian Wushuang shook his head. Suppression was even less viable. Swordsmanship required sharpness, and suppression seemed too subtle. Why suppress when you could annihilate? Suppress! Jian Wushuang emerged directly from the earth, standing beside Bai Junwang, staring at the Tier 4 peak-level emperor in the sky, revealing a hint of a smile. Before he could speak, a group of people appeared in the sea behind him, led by an ordinary Tier 5 emperor. Much weaker than Kuan-Tai, it seemed like a pauper without even an eternal treasure. Among the same tier, this kind of Tier 5 emperor was quite embarrassing. The 4 great secret realms were rich in resources, and ending NN like this either meant just breaking through or being unwilling to take risks. Even if unwilling to take risks, like Kuan-Tai, serving others could earn you an eternal treasure in a few years. Unwilling to take risks and unwilling to serve others. Still wanting to become stronger, then only miracles could help. Don't say it, today really turned out to be a miracle. Mo Qian. When he heard the rumors, he was overjoyed and rushed over with people. An unstoppable momentum. But when he saw Jian Wushuang and Bai Junwang, he froze. Wasn't it said that there were only a few Tier 4 peaks? Why couldn't he gauge the strength of these two? For a moment, countless thoughts raced through his mind, comparing appearances, and the conclusion was certain. The first to notice Bai Junwang. That young emperor pointed at the two below and shouted madly, "Senior Mo, I told you there would be people here." He looked disdainfully at the others. This time he'd take credit for it. But before he could be happy, Mo Qian slapped him directly, leaving the young emperor dumbfounded. Mo Qian wore a face of feigned regret, flicked his sleeves, and then revealed a smile. He looked at Bai Junwang and apologized. "My own nephew lacks manners. I hope Dao friend can forgive this." His expression changed faster than flipping a book, and though the onlookers were surprised, they understood. If even Mo Qian couldn't discern the opponent's strength, these people certainly couldn't either. Not to mention capturing the opponent, they might not even be a match. The most prudent approach now was to transmit the entire situation. Mo Qian had a communication godstone on him, and the moment he discovered it, the information was transmitted to the Lord of Guiling Island 0. A trillion was secured, but the crucial part was apprehending the opponent. It seemed there was no chance now. The opponent's strength was beyond their understanding, far surpassing Mo Qian. The youth who had been struck was a bit dazed. When he tried to speak, the emperor behind him swiftly and deftly slapped him on the head, instantly rendering him unconscious. Jian Wushuang turned to look at Bai Junwang, and both of them were puzzled. These people were clearly hiding something, and it seemed related to them. "Move!" Boom! Jian Wushuang burst forth, his sword slashing through the dense dark clouds in the sky. In an instant, he killed a Tier 4 emperor. His sword Dao had grown stronger. Bai Junwang had recovered his strength well. With a casual press of his hand, he froze everyone in midair, watching as Jian Wushuang slaughtered these people. The youth who had been knocked out was thrown by Jian Wushuang next to Bai Junwang. "We'll keep this Uggy alive." These Tier 4 emperors were too weak, and Jian Wushuang couldn't be bothered to engage them. He killed them all, leaving only Mo Qian, the Tier 5 emperor, who now seemed on the verge of kneeling down. Reluctance to take risks stems from cherishing one's life. Unwillingness to be a dog reflects the refusal to abandon dignity. Compared to dignity, the weight of life is heavier, or else one wouldn't hesitate to take risks. "Forgive me, fellow Taoist. I'll tell you everything I know." Mo Qian knelt down, his eyes filled with fear as he looked at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang frowned as he observed, unsure how this person had cultivated into a Tier 5 emperor. Upon further contemplation, perhaps the individual had once been a passionate and fervent cultivator, but after reaching emperor rank, they struggled to break through and gradually fell into decadence. Being too attached to life is not good. For cultivators aspiring for strength, the first thing to relinquish is one's own life. Jian Wushuang also values his life greatly, but in critical moments he dares to fight. All of this is not obtained without a struggle. In the past, with the extreme Tao, he almost couldn't return. Even after successfully refining his physical body 9 times through the 9 refinements, when he condensed it for the 10th time, he nearly perished. Without risking everything, there is no strength. Without strength, there is no dignity. The order must be understood correctly. Clearly, this Tier 5 Emperor has forgotten his past pursuits. Stand up, Jian Wushuang angrily ordered, unable to tolerate others wasting their lives. Especially cultivators who fear death and cling to life are particularly detestable. After being scolded, Mo Qian glanced at Bai Junwang. With just one look, he recognized that Bai Junwang was the true powerhouse in his eyes, the only one deserving of such a title. Although Jian Wushuang now threatened his life, everything felt contingent on Bai Junwang. As long as Bai Junwang nodded, Mo Qian believed he could survive. You don't get up, I'll kill you right now. Stand up, face me in battle. Win and you can leave. Lose, and leave your life behind. Jian Wushuang held a simple and ancient long sword, staring deeply at the opponent. A Tier 5 Emperor, an ordinary one at that. Nothing too powerful in terms of treasures. This was a good whetstone to test his sword Dao. However, Mo Qian was overly cautious and still unwilling to get up. Jian Wushuang coldly said, "Don't make a move," prompting Bai Junwang to rein in his methods. Upon hearing this, Mo Qian was momentarily stunned. A Tier 4 Emperor could actually command someone who seemed to be a Tier 6 Emperor. A Tier 6 Emperor, in his eyes, was already at the peak, untouchable and not threatened by anyone. There was no need to serve anyone. He himself was a major force and didn't need to care about anyone's opinions. Shakily getting to his feet, Mo Qian's voice was hoarse as he asked, "How can you guarantee sparing my life?" Hearing this, Jian Wushuang couldn't help but laugh. "Do you have such confidence in defeating me?" Jian Wushuang stared at the opponent. Mo Qian moved his body slightly, and when he looked at Jian Wushuang, there was not much fear in his eyes. Based on Jian Wushuang's recent display, Mo Qian guessed that he was only a Tier 4 powerhouse, not even a Tier 5 Emperor. How could he lose? Indeed, Jian Wushuang didn't have the power of a Tier 5 Emperor, but at the moment he was not much inferior to a Tier 5 Emperor. He had even tricked the Tier 5 Emperor Kuan-Tai. Dealing with a cowardly Tier 5 ordinary Emperor wasn't challenging at all. Mo Qian didn't harbor hatred towards Bai Junwang, only awe. However, he harbored resentment towards Jian Wushuang. A Tier 4 Emperor dared to act like this, not because of his own strength but because there was a powerhouse supporting him from behind. Yet he dared not voice these thoughts. "Well, you must make an oath." Jian Wushuang directly slashed with his sword and angrily scolded. "You think you're worthy of asking to make an oath? Today, regardless of your victory or defeat, you must die." This person was beyond redemption, and Jian Wushuang didn't consider him human anymore. He acted directly. Upon hearing this, despair filled Mo Qian's eyes. "You shameless brat! If it weren't for the protection of my family, I could easily kill you with a wave of my hand." However, when Mo Qian made a move, he realized that killing Jian Wushuang was indeed somewhat difficult. Boom! One careless move, and Mo Qian was cleaved by Jian Wushuang's sword, landing on the island below and shattering the already small isle. Gong Miaoyi stepped out of the time pavilion. Observing the outside world without making a move, she stood side by side with Bai Junwang, watching Jian Wushuang engage in combat with the Tier 5 Emperor. Her strength had surged again, breaking through to the level of a Tier 5 Emperor. Moreover, she was not an ordinary Tier 5 Emperor. She possessed an extraordinary eternal treasure. She had initially intended to shake off these pursuers. However, she noticed that Bai Junwang's strength had increased too rapidly, now reaching Tier 6. On the other hand, Jian Wushuang hadn't experienced much growth. She couldn't understand why, with such a disparity in strength, Bai Junwang still listened to Jian Wushuang. When Jian Wushuang appeared within her origin source, she understood. She thought Bai Junwang was also threatened by Jian Wushuang. Suppress. Jian Wushuang held the sword in both hands, closing his eyes slightly. In this moment, he and the sword became one. It was simple to solidify the word with the sword, but much harder to achieve the opposite. Kuan-Tai, who emerged from the ruins, was somewhat astonished but managed to display his full strength. He transformed his hands into blades and headed straight for Jian Wushuang. Facing this fierce strike, Jian Wushuang remained motionless. It was about to reach him. Bai Junwang grew anxious and loudly exclaimed, "Should I intervene?" Gong Miaoi on the side was also surprised. She hadn't expected Jian Wushuang to go to such lengths. Clearly, he was pushing himself to the limit, seeking a breakthrough. "Suppress!" Just as the palm knife pierced his forehead, he angrily shouted, then opened his eyes. Jian Wushuang exchanged glances with Mo Qian, revealing a sneer. "Seal!" Crack! Mo Qian's body began to solidify, and at the same time, a surprised expression appeared on his face. Everything froze at this moment. Jian Wushuang hadn't even made a move. There was just a glance containing a significant amount of sword intent. At the moment Mo Qian solidified, he had already fallen. "Who?" Bai Junwang watched anxiously, finally exhaling a breath. The ultimate sword Dao breakthrough. Jian Wushuang was excited. It was not just a simple breakthrough. He had made a qualitative leap in his understanding of the sword Dao. Suppress and seal. The two words had similar meanings, and the purity sought by the sword Dao was also related to this. In fact, Jian Wushuang didn't need to overthink or pursue more. A slight change in perspective was enough. Suppression and sealing. In one breath, the 8th level of the ultimate Dao was far from as simple as Jian Wushuang had thought. The closer he got to the realm of perfection, the more he experienced. Jian Wushuang faintly felt that behind suppression and sealing, 2 more words were needed. In the future, he could slowly deduce based on these 2 words. Descend slowly to the ground, looking at the young man who had been knocked unconscious. Jian Wushuang pointed at him, directly awakening him. Opening his eyes and glancing around, he didn't have time to stand up. He hurriedly crawled backward, but Gong Miaoi's sleeve enveloped him, pulling him back. "Speak up." The gazes of the 3 were cold. These people obviously knew them and had come with a purpose. Jian Wushuang had a bad feeling deep in his heart. These people were clearly not strong individuals from the Mo Luo nation. Why would they be searching for them? Even if they had offended the Mo Luo nation, everyone knew that Gong Miaoi possessed an extraordinary eternal treasure. It shouldn't drive them to such madness. The terrified young man trembled, too scared to offer any resistance, and spilled out everything he knew. As Jian Wushuang and the others listened, the situation seemed increasingly absurd. A sky-high bounty? Even Tier 6 emperors are involved. Gong Miaoi's eyes were profound, but there was a dimness in their gleam. An eternal treasure of top-notch quality was indeed extremely precious. When a Tier 5 emperor went mad, even a Tier 6 emperor would pursue. However, it shouldn't have reached the point of alarming the entire Western Sea. The Western Sea was vast, and there were numerous eternal treasures. Almost every Tier 6 emperor possessed one. What was even stranger was that even the inheritors had been stirred. Gong Miaoi, in her past weaker state, knew little about the matters of inheritance. But Jian Wushuang was well informed. In the past, inheritors were indeed impoverished, with only Emperor Fengyu possessing an eternal treasure throughout the entire original universe. However, since they went to the Grave God Mountain, these people had experienced significant improvements. Wuliang Buddha, once belonging to Tier 3, had now reached the peak of the Tier 4. Moreover, they could now confront Tier 5 top-level emperors directly. Even those without top-notch eternal treasures had peak eternal treasures on their persons. The scale was by no means small. It was said that more than one inheritor had appeared this time. It was estimated that several Tier 5 emperors had arrived, as otherwise, they wouldn't be able to contend with Tier 6 emperors. It's just that Jian Wushuang doesn't know who they are. Jian Wushuang frowned and glanced at Bai Junwang, transmitting his voice. "Ask the people from Kuei organization what's going on." Right now, he hated being hunted down the most. His eyes moved, and with just one glance, he suppressed the Tier 4 emperor on the ground, turning his remains into powder. Gong Miaoi revealed a hint of astonishment. When Jian Wushuang entered her body, she discovered that Jian Wushuang was different from an emperor. Although his origin source was powerful, there was still a difference compared to an emperor. In her view, Jian Wushuang's origin source was more like that of a Tao Lord. Jian Wushuang ascended into the air and said lightly, "Let's go. It's not suitable to stay here for long. We've already been exposed." According to the Tier 4 Emperor, Mo Qian must have informed those Tier 6 Emperors. If they didn't leave soon, those Tier 6 old monsters would arrive. Being able to make Tier 6 Emperors join forces, they probably had a huge agenda, maybe relying on some treasure to quickly find them. "Follow me." Bai Junwang seemed to have sensed something, waving his hand and directly enveloping Jian Wushuang and Gong Miaoyi, tearing through space and entering the gap, flying amidst the chaotic flows of space, crossing the sea in a single step. Jian Wushuang transmitted quietly, "How's it going? Did you find out?" 948. This time it's not simple. Lord Xinling informed us. "We're supposed to go to Qingmeng Island. Someone is waiting for us there." Bai Junwang's expression also became serious. His message had just been sent out when the response from Xinling arrived, indicating that there was indeed a divine plan behind all this. This time, it seemed they had gotten involved in a significant matter. Jian Wushuang was quite shocked upon hearing the connection to Xinling. Originally planning to scheme against Luo Sha, it appeared that the plan needed to be adjusted. Bai Junwang's origin source had already been successfully refined, and the karmic ties had been resolved. As long as Bai Junwang restored his strength, he could help Jian Wushuang obtain the beast god weapon. Of course, this was the worst-case scenario. Jian Wushuang preferred to personally strive for it. Once he obtained the components of the beast god weapon, he had no need to stay in the Earth realm. Instead, he could go to the heavenly realm, find Wuxia in the Elder Palace, and have him send him to Grave God Mountain. If he knew that Xinling wanted him to go to Grave God Mountain by himself, it probably wouldn't be so easy. Indeed, plans couldn't keep up with changes. His original plan was to merge with the Tao at Grave God Mountain. However, if he really wanted to search for Grave God Mountain in God's tomb, there was simply no opportunity to do so without merging with the Tao. There, the most terrifying special life forms existed. Near the swirling sea, the island lords Guiling received the message and immediately took action. However, they lost contact with Mo Qian and the others shortly after setting out. "The intelligence is flawed. Mo Qian has already fallen," remarked a Tier 6 Emperor skilled in deduction. He had long deduced that Gong Miaoyi's strength had significantly increased, far beyond that of an ordinary Tier 5 Emperor, with two formidable allies by her side. Island Lord Guiling had an unpleasant expression. After waiting for so long, they still couldn't locate Gong Miaoyi. Now, when they finally received information, it vanished again. On the side of the inheritors, many powerful individuals had gathered. In the main hall where Zhen Wuyang resided. Crash! Qi Shui directly shattered the teacup into pieces, cursing, "People from the Grave God Mountain are one thing, but why are the elders from the Elder Palace here too? Those old wastes, what use are they? They've been stuck at the same level for a lifetime. Why compete with us for opportunities? Brother Qi Shui, don't get too angry. Even if the Elder Palace's strongmen come, they may not necessarily surpass us." Tongtian Buddha remained calm, observing everything. Zhen Wuyang stayed silent, but internally, he cursed. Tongtian Buddha had already saturated his opportunities, so he naturally didn't care about this small matter. It was easy for him to speak. The Elder Palace sent the Hall of Enforcement, with Wuxia in command. 2 Tier 6 peak-level emperors and 10 Tier 5 peak-level emperors, each possessing complete origin source Tao. Just the 2 Tier 6 emperors alone could sweep aside everyone present. Although all were forces under Xinling, when it came to competing for treasures, no one would yield. What would happen when the time came? "The situation has somewhat exceeded our control." Zhen Wuyang spoke up, "Brother Qi Shui, don't you have some connection with Senior Shang? Perhaps you could." Qi Shui's expression changed, and he cleared his throat a few times. He first took out a new teacup, poured himself a cup of tea, and slowly took a sip. Zhen Wuyang and Tongtian Buddha were anxious but didn't want to rush him. I do have some friendship with Senior Xiang. While he said that those who rose to prominence early knew that he and Xiang rose to power together, belonging to the same generation. However, they had significant grievances. Even back in the Bloodthirst continent, they didn't get along. It wasn't until the Grave God Mountain, where he heard that Xiang had reached Tier 6 and was treated like a treasure by Jinling. They heard that Xiang carefully cultivated, and that he changed his attitude. He even lowered his status to mend relations. Xiang, naturally quiet and reserved, had similar topics with his peers, and they reconciled to some extent. Zhen Wuyang smiled and said loudly, "Brother Qishui has a wide circle of friends. Tong Tian and I admire that. If Senior Xiang can be persuaded to come this time, I think we're at least 90% secure." These words were appreciated by Qishui. "Then I'll ask. Please ask. Ha ha ha." With similar smiles, Qishui really went to ask. Grave God Mountain. In a cave halfway up the mountain, Qishui's avatar stood up and walked out. Looking up, Grave God Mountain had 88 layers, and Qishui was currently on the 40th floor. To climb higher required strength. In Grave God Mountain, flying was restricted, but if you could break through the 60th floor, you could fly as you pleased. Following the stairs, he walked all the way to the 64th floor. The only abode of the ultimate Emperor Xiang was right here. The entire 64th level all to himself. Senior Xiang. Qishui, with a smile on his face, called out softly. Ripples gradually rose in the abode, and a man with white temples but a young face walked out. Qishui. After a reply, Xiang couldn't help but comment, "How many times have I told you? Let's just call each other brothers." Qishui's face shook, saying solemnly, "Absolutely not. You are now a Tier 6 Emperor. Naturally, you're my senior." "You." Xiang pointed at Qishui, and in the end, he could only shake his head helplessly. If they really followed the hierarchy, he would have to address Qishui as an ancestor. In his youth, Xiang's Tao companion was a special life form, connected with Qishui from childhood, considered of the same lineage. It was because of this Tao companion that he came to know Qishui, and their relationship became strained due to their evenly matched strengths. Now, resolving the tension, Qishui's current attitude truly made him uncomfortable. "Let's go, we can talk inside." Xiang waved his hand, and the two entered the abode. Though called an abode, it was a miniature world where ordinary people lived, and Xiang's residence was on a cloud peak. Baohan Court. The two sat facing each other. "Is this your avatar?" A breath dispersed, and Qishui only then discovered that Xiang was actually just an avatar. But the power emanating from it was vastly different. Xiang didn't conceal it either, nodding and personally pouring tea for Qishui. Qishui was surprised. After several years, Xiang's strength seemed to have increased significantly. Now, just a mere manifestation of his avatar left Qishui unable to fathom the depths. "This time coming, it seems there's some business," Xiang remarked, understanding without further elaboration. Qishui didn't beat around the bush either and straightforwardly stated, "Indeed, a small matter. A small matter? A small matter." However, after hearing Qishui's account, Xiang's gaze shifted. This small matter was not trivial. When his true self ventured beyond the realms, Jinling personally orchestrated this affair. Perhaps Qishui and the others were unaware. "I'll go." Seeing the decisiveness of the other party, Qishui thought he was being given face and stood up, somewhat excited. Following Xiang meant at least he could get some benefits, maybe even a chance to partake in some substantial gains. "But my true self is not in this place. This time, I can only send my avatar," Xiang said with a faint smile. Qishui had no objections to this. Just this avatar was impenetrable to him, with strength at least reaching the pinnacle of Tier 6. Coupled with the ultimate Emperor level, it possessed a flawlessly perfect origin source. Even the formidable experts of the Elder Palace would be swept away. With powerful external assistance secured, Qishui gained some confidence in front of Zhen Wuyang and Tongtian Buddha. "Two gentlemen, I'll be straightforward. Since the four of us are joining forces, should we reconsider the distribution?" Qishui glanced at the two. Given Shang's status, he would probably disdain such matters, so Qi Shui had to handle them in advance. Naturally, Jin Wuyang nodded and said, "In that case, I'll contribute 2/10, and the two of you can contribute 2/10 each." Tong Tian Buddha was indifferent. Previously, they had agreed on a 3-3-4 split, with Jin Wuyang taking 4/10. Of course, this was all based on treasures obtained collectively. If someone relied on luck to acquire a treasure, it would be considered personal. Suppose 3 people cooperated to seize a treasure. Then it would be divided according to a 3-3-4 ratio. Now, with Jin Wuyang offering 1/10 and the other 2 contributing 1/10 each, it became a 3-3-2-2 split. Qi Shui really wanted to say that Jin Wuyang was just as greedy as Shang, getting the same share as him. Was it just because he initiated the proposal? If only Jin Wuyang could lead them in, that would be acceptable. But now, with everyone having the chance to enter, how could it still be divided in such a way? The 3 of them discussed fervently in the hall and eventually settled on a distribution plan. We each take 20%, and the remaining 40% goes to Senior Shang. Qi Shui and Tong Tian Buddha stood together. Regardless of how it was divided, the 2 of them were adamant about elevating Senior Shang just like Jin Wuyang. Jin Wuyang suppressed his anger and could only agree. When he turned to look at Tong Tian Fo, Jin Wuyang revealed a meaningful gaze. Indeed, the wisest people generally spoke the least. Tong Tian Buddha, from start to finish, either nodded or shook his head. Without doing much, he secured 20%. Qi Shui at least managed to invite someone influential. As the instigator, he ended up letting Tong Tian Fo take advantage of the situation. After everyone paid attention, Shang also arrived. He came in a low-key manner known to very few. Apart from some inheritors, almost no one else recognized him, not even the people from the Elder Palace. With great respect, they presented Shang at the main seat, and Jin Wuyang and the others began studying the key to unlocking the opportunity, the Bloodfall Crystal. On Qing Mang Island. A key, Jian Wushuang exclaimed, asking, "Elder Qing Mang, is this what Shenling's mentioned?" Jian Wushuang found it hard to believe. A super ruins. In the ancient era, the abode of the universe master, the birthplace of gods. A series of events left Jian Wushuang's head spinning. They had merely stumbled upon an ancient abode, watching as Gong Miaoi obtained an extraordinary eternal treasure. How could it turn out to be the key to the super ruins? I don't know about that, but Lord Shenling has ordered that only core members can go, and others must not proceed. The speaker's gaze turned hostile as they looked at Gong Miaoi, a hint of killing intent in their eyes. Gong Miaoi panicked. Since she encountered Jian Wushuang, nothing good had happened. Either she was being chased or someone was after her life on the escape route. Now, in this place, someone else wanted her dead. Jian Wushuang toyed with the jade tablet on his thumb, lost in thought. Gong Miaoi indeed proved to be quite useful to him now that he had broken through to the 8th level of the ultimate Tao, providing a clear path for the future. Keeping her alive served little purpose, and if she had no value, killing her was inconsequential. Wait! Gong Miaoi took a step back, her expression changing rapidly. Coldly, she said, "Do you know why it's called Bloodfall Crystal?" As she spoke, she summoned the Bloodfall Crystal. Bloodlines surged, countless blood spheres congealed from sacrifices, crystal clear. This is formed by the condensation of blood. You can't take it away. If I die, the Bloodfall Crystal disappears. Upon hearing this, Elder Qing Mang hesitated, retracting his killing intent. Jian Wushuang smiled and said, "We never said we were going to kill you." "Humph. You despicable person. Stop pretending to be a good guy." Gong Miaoi, rarely tearing off her facade, directly scolded Jian Wushuang. Unfazed by this, Jian Wushuang gestured for everyone to step back. The mental power avatar within Gong Miaoi's body forcefully began to occupy her origin source. In an instant, Gong Miaoi slumped to the ground, wearing a pained expression on her face, unable to move. Raising his hand, Jian Wushuang drew Gong Miaoi into his palm. "All right, let's set out directly," he declared. Elder Qing Mang, a peak-level Tier 6 emperor, witnessed Jian Wushuang effortlessly handling a Tier 5 pinnacle emperor and couldn't help but reveal an astonished expression. He was well aware of Jian Wushuang's background. As the direct descendant of Xinling, Jian Wushuang knew far more than ordinary elders of Kuei. Jian Wushuang, just a Dao lord, possessed such formidable strength that he could effortlessly control a peak-level Tier 5 emperor with a casual gesture? In reality, he wasn't that powerful. The key was Jian Wushuang's thought avatar. It could enter the origin source of cultivators, and as long as the origin source wasn't exceptionally powerful, Jian Wushuang's thought power avatar could transform into a miniature black hole. Emperors whose origin source hadn't reached the level of a black hole couldn't resist. Of course, getting inside wasn't easy. Otherwise, Jian Wushuang could stroll through the Tier 6 emperors as he pleased. Directly there? Bai Junwang expressed some surprise. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. This matter can't be delayed. Many people are waiting to capture us. Xinling had already provided them with accurate coordinates. They just needed to go there and activate the relic. Still in the Black Demon Sea? Jian Wushuang furrowed his brow, fearing those who were unwilling to leave and continued searching in the Black Demon Sea. Elder Qing Mang explained, "The Black Demon Sea is vast. We may not necessarily encounter those people, and even if we do, we can deal with them easily." This first-rank elder was quite confident. As a Tier 6 pinnacle emperor with a complete set of top-tier eternal treasures and treasures on par with the peak level, Jian Wushuang had the confidence to face even those at the peak level. Except for Qing Mang, there were also two Tier 6 emperors, Zhishan and Lan Yu. These two individuals possessed extraordinary strength, both at the top level. In addition to these three, there were 30 emperor figures dressed in straw robes and masks. This formidable force was the result of Xinling's planning in the Western Sea over countless eras. Finally, it was now being put into action. All of them were devout followers of Xinling, far surpassing the ordinary members of the Kuei organization. For example, Xian Yuandepan, also an elder of Kuei men, leaned more towards the family in the conflict between Kuei men and the family. Such individuals were not suitable. There had to be sufficient benefits to mobilize them. It was different for devoted followers. Ask them to crash into the east wall, and they would not hit the south wall. These people were like devoted followers, unwaveringly loyal. This time, following the orders of Xinling, everything will be under the command of Bai Junwang and Lord Wushuang. Zhishan's voice was deep. Upon hearing this, Jian Wushuang breathed a sigh of relief. He did not want to be a bystander. Being the leader was crucial. Bai Junwang didn't care much about that. He only focused on one thing, what Qing Mang said about his suitable physical body and divine body being in that super ruin. This time he had to go all out. He couldn't recover to the peak without obtaining the suitable physical and divine body. Wanting to refine his divine body and physical form on his own wasn't impossible, but the cost involved was exorbitant. To recover his Tier 6 strength, he had spent billions of treasures, with the crucial factor being the Heavenly Demon Supreme technique, which greatly enhanced him. However, all of this was not enough. If he were to refine it himself, he would have to break everything. Start anew, establish a foundation, and then steadily progress. The physical body was manageable. The cost of a top-tier physical body was relatively ordinary. But the divine body was a different story. His origin source was now complete, comparable to the ultimate. If he were to pursue the divine body, it would need to break through to 70,000-fold. But where could he find the 70,000-fold divine body? Without 10,000 epochs, he couldn't recondense the peak divine body. He had originally thought that Xinling would have been prepared for him long ago, but unexpectedly, he had to seize it himself. With Gong Miaoi in tow, Jian Wushuang followed Elder Qing Mang and quickly arrived at the Black Demon Sea. The biting wind was fierce, bringing a piercing cold with it. This is the deep expanse of the Black Demon Sea, even deeper than their last visit. Down there, Elder Qing Mang glanced at the Jade Slip. The Jade Slip provided guidance based on their location. Initially, the Jade Slip only contained one message, a call to gather on Qingmang Island for Jian Wushuang and Bai Junwang. When everyone arrived, a second message appeared, indicating a location, Black Demon Sea. Upon reaching the Black Demon Sea, the second message was revealed. Descend to the seafloor. Jian Wushuang glanced at the dark clouds pressing overhead, took a deep breath, and dove straight into the water. Splash! Everyone began to submerge. Jian Wushuang's body, like a sharp sword, pierced through the water for billions of miles without reaching the lowest point. The pressure of the seawater here was enough to crush a Tao Lord. A sheen of light appeared on Jian Wushuang's body, a devouring force that absorbed all the squeezing pressure, rendering it harmless to him. The others, all at least peak-level Tier 5, faced no issues. However, even after traveling billions of miles, they had not reached the bottom, surprising Jian Wushuang. This was too deep. Continuing the descent, the resistance increased. Initially, they encountered some sea monsters, but now not a single one was in sight. Sea monsters also possessed intelligence, and operating at such depths proved too uncomfortable for them. Woo! As Jian Wushuang continued to dive, he heard a melodious sound. When he looked down, a giant mouth, spanning millions of miles, was about to swallow everyone. Rows of sharp teeth were terrifying to behold. Don't panic. It has already fallen. Elder Zhishan took the lead and entered the giant sea monster's mouth. Elder Lan Yu clapped his hands, and a stream of light illuminated the entire seabed. The enormous sea monster revealed its form, resembling an ancient primordial beast. The bloodline power was mediocre, but when alive it was at least at the peak of the Tier 6. Having remained uncorroded for so many years, even the skeleton alone was worth a considerable amount of godstones. Though tempted, Jian Wushuang wouldn't lower his status to take a skeleton. They were people with great ambitions. Splash! While he refrained, Bai Junwang was not polite. His figure transformed into millions of miles in size, directly pulling the primordial beast skeleton out of the seabed. Although the others were somewhat surprised, they dared not say anything and even went up to help. Jian Wushuang was in disbelief. Help! Help me devour the debris above. Bai Junwang waved his hand, signaling. Hiss! He knew Bai Junwang's idea, wanting to take the skeleton to enhance his physical body and further elevate his divine body, pushing his strength higher. Bai Junwang's current combat power was comparable to the pinnacle of the Tier 6, but it wasn't enough. Any improvement would be welcome. After merging with the primordial beast, Bai Junwang felt that his physical body still lacked something. He cleared his throat and said, "Do you have treasures on you? Items that can enhance the divine body?" Enough! Jian Wushuang, with a dark face, walked toward Bai Junwang, placed a hand on his shoulder, and then transferred a massive amount of the power of all things. Then he continued, "That's about it. Hurry up and open the relic. It's urgent." Once again, the group dived, reaching the seabed. Elder Qing Mang looked at the jade slip, and another message appeared above. Travel north for 1,000,000 miles, and you will find an underground mansion. Jian Wushuang nodded and said, "Let's go." Without any unnecessary words, he directly instructed Elder Qing Mang to lead the way. Sure enough, not far away, there was a low and narrow cave, only about 10 feet high. The group transformed into ordinary human forms and slowly entered. Leading the way were 4 emperors in coats, each holding a precious dark lamp to illuminate the path ahead. Jian Wushuang observed the surroundings and felt a creepy sensation. It seemed like they weren't searching for relics but more like tomb raiders. "It's here." Elder Qing Mang pointed to a stone tablet ahead. On it were some ancient inscriptions. Jian Wushuang didn't recognize any of these characters. They were not from the ancient era or even the language of the human race. Bai Junwang, take a look. Jian Wushuang stepped aside, allowing Bai Junwang to approach. Regardless, Bai Junwang had lived for several eras. During the time of Qishan, Bai Junwang was already an emperor. He must have more knowledge. Approaching Bai Junwang, Jian Wushuang took out a set of worn-out clothes from his spatial item and gently wiped away the green marks on the stone. FO! After a while, Bai Junwang finally deciphered the first inscription. The stone tablet had tens of thousands of inscriptions. Translating all of them would take years. Understand these first. Jian Wushuang pointed to the top inscriptions on the stone tablet. Bai Junwang continued his study. After a while, he finally squeezed out a few characters. Fuego, Bai Junwang continued. At the top, it should be recording the oath of a powerful being named Fuego, who set out for a campaign. Although Jian Wushuang and the others found it somewhat confusing, at least they now knew the individual's name and purpose, better than being completely in the dark. The group first attempted to see if they could collect the tombstone. When they realized it was futile, they gave up. Wake her up. Let's go inside first. Jian Wushuang threw Gong Miaoi in front of the tombstone. His avatar had stopped devouring. Gong Miaoi should have awakened by now, but she didn't seem to be pretending. It was most likely that she couldn't resist. Elder Zishan took out a soul lamp, lifted it above Gong Miaoi's head, and began to silently chant an incantation. The sound was not blocked, nearly causing Jian Wushuang to pass out. Fortunately, his thought-mental power endured it. Soon, Gong Miaoi's tightly furrowed brows relaxed, and she slowly opened her eyes. What is this? Jian Wushuang sighed. You're finally awake. However, Gong Miaoi seemed to have lost some memories. She couldn't recognize Jian Wushuang and the others but showed great trust in Elder Zishan. She stood up and bowed slightly. Master! Jian Wushuang was taken aback but then understood. Gong Miaoi had been completely controlled. Just as he relaxed, a faint thought power tore through the void and reached the distant Redwood Sea region. That mental power eventually fell into the hands of the fourth prince of the Mo Luo Kingdom, Luo Chuan. Black Demon Undersea, coordinates. Luo Chuan, upon receiving the message, was overjoyed and hurriedly went to the main hall where the Lord of Turtle Spirit Island was located. But when he saw his elder brother, Luo Sha, and noticed his changed expression, he felt uneasy. Besides Luo Sha, several brothers, all of them Tier 5 emperors, were present. Tier 4 emperors didn't have the qualifications to participate this time. The threshold had been raised to Tier 5 emperors. Luo Chuan's special status and being the first to discover led to his presence here. Once again, he made significant contributions. At the same time, Zhen Wuyang and others anxiously waited in the main hall. They initially held high expectations for the business, but eventually, Tongtian Buddha subtly manipulated the situation. He had led Zhen Wuyang to seek the help of Zhenling. In the end, Zhenling told them to wait patiently. Opportunities would naturally come. Indeed, within a few days, Zhenling provided a location. Guiling and others set out quietly, while Zhen Wuyang and his group moved stealthily. Meanwhile, the people of the Elder Palace had already reached the Black Demon Sea. On the peak of the Grave God Mountain, 88 layers high, Zhenling stood, overseeing everything. The Lord of the Black Tortoise Hall, behind him, somewhat puzzled, asked, My lord, is it really necessary to take such risks? It would be more prudent for me and the others to break in directly. Humph, even if you forcefully break in, I won't let an old turtle like you enter. I've always suspected whether you are still the puppet created back then. What if you've been transformed by someone else, and all the treasures are obtained by you? Then, I'll be at a loss. Zhenling glanced at Xian Yi with his small eyes. He had always felt that Xian Yi had too many secrets, making him somewhat inscrutable. Why did that predecessor choose a snapping turtle? Why not go for the Azure Dragon? If the Azure Dragon was unreliable, why not choose Zhu Yi? Instead, he chose Xian Yi. It was strange. Since that predecessor led the Qixin Temple to the original universe and made a covenant with the origin source consciousness, intending to take away the true master, selecting strong individuals in the original universe. He spread seeds in the original universe under the name of Xian Yi, attempting to find the future strong individual carefully planned by time. Although it was said that he couldn't be found, who knew if it was true or false? Xian Yi understood that words were futile at this point. He had indeed crossed many lines, but if he didn't act this way, Qixin Temple would be in jeopardy. If one were to ask who was the most loyal to Qixin Temple, he was more loyal than anyone else because he possessed a human heart. Zhenling sneered and said, Give me the item, and you can leave. You are not welcome here. Yes. Xianxia's figure looked somewhat desolate as his short and weathered silhouette disappeared into the grave god mountain. Watching the departing figure, Zhenling chuckled coldly. Humph. He really thinks highly of himself. Tilting a square-shaped small seal in his hand, he took a step and directly arrived at the Black Demon Sea. Lord Zhenling. The group from the Elder Palace hurriedly bowed. Hold onto this item. Without it, you won't be able to enter. Remember, everything revolves around the inheritors, but don't let them notice. Then Zhenling disappeared. He had never harbored selfish intentions. Establishing the Elder Palace was also a service for the inheritors, planning for the future. However, those puppets didn't understand his intentions. Only Xianxia understood. But Xianxia couldn't be considered one of his own anymore. Regardless of how sincerely the other party expressed loyalty, the heart had changed, and what use was there for him to believe? The people of the Elder Palace held the small seal and began to submerge. However, they were not prepared to surface first but intended to wait until everyone had gathered. They were waiting for the inheritors, waiting for Zhen Wuyang and the others. Meanwhile, underwater, Gong Miaoi activated the bloodfall crystal. Countless blood-colored lines enveloped the tombstone, causing it to begin sinking. Is it about to open? Jian Wushuang turned his head and looked behind him. As the tombstone descended, another tombstone rose again. What's going on? Bai Junwang stepped forward, wiping the tombstone clean. With the insights gained from the previous deduction, he quickly recognized the inscription. Three Kings Court. It was a place name, a name that, in ancient times, carried a reputation not weaker than that of the Qixin Temple. Bai Junwang was also taken aback, saying, 3 kings? Could it be the 3 of them? His eyes reflected a nostalgic hue as Bai Junwang reminisced about ancient times. Moro River. The Moro Temporal River. Qixin was the overlord. Its influence spread throughout the entire temporal river. Just like the current temple in the 4 great secret realms, it was absolutely invincible. However, apart from the Qixin Temple, there were several other forces. These forces were not as formidable as the Qixin Temple, but they also had widespread renown, much like the hidden Kuei organization and Shadow Sect. While they dared not openly confront the Qixin Temple, there were covert clashes. The 3 Kings Court was such a super force. It was a super force established by 3 supremely powerful individuals, each commanding numerous universe masters. These 3 once joined forces against the Qixin, but unfortunately, they weren't a match. For the sake of the stability of the temporal river, the Qixin didn't exterminate them. In the ancient catastrophe that destroyed the Moro River, the entire temporal river collapsed, and 3 Kings Court naturally perished. The Bai Junwang of that time had just stepped into the temporal river and was nothing more than a small figure. Both 3 Kings Court and Qixin Temple were super forces beyond reach. So, upon seeing these 3 characters, he couldn't help but reveal a great sense of shock. After the shock came confusion. The characters on these 2 stone steels were different from what he had seen in the ancient times. And that figure, Fuego, was someone he had never heard of. If he were weak and insignificant, it would be understandable not to have heard of him. But could someone capable of contending with the 3 kings be an unknown? Obviously not. Moreover, Xinling was born in this place. Could it be that Xinling was affiliated with the 3 kings? Jian Wushuang, anxious on the side, inquired, How is it? Bai Junwang recounted everything he knew, and Jian Wushuang furrowed his brows while listening. However, after hearing it all, he still yearned for the river of time. The glory of ancient times was indeed something he had never witnessed. Moro River? How many rivers of time are there in the starry sky? Jian Wushuang recalled the rivers he had seen in the starry sky. 9 of the broadest rivers, along with hundreds of tributaries. And the river of time in the original universe was dim and the weakest among the tributaries. Let her try this tombstone again. There was a hint of desolation in Bai Junwang's eyes. Recalling the past, he felt a bit nostalgic. Unfortunately, in the current 4 great secret realms, there was no one who could talk to him. Perhaps those people in the Elder Palace also knew each other from the 4 great secret realms. Although he had been plundered into the 4 great secret realms, during construction, he pretended to be dead and was hidden away by Shen Ling Wush. Before the blood-red lines could make contact, they were neatly cut off. Gong Miaoi also groaned, evidently suffering from a backlash. It didn't work? Jian Wushuang was somewhat surprised. Wasn't this person acting a bit foolish? If they can't do it, then why are they wasting time here? Just as they were about to try again, a powerful aura from the outside was approaching, interrupting them. Powerful individuals are approaching. Quickly stop them, Jian Wushuang angrily shouted, retreating to the rear, standing side by side with Bai Junwang. Bai Junwang took a step forward. Whether it was the recent stimulation or something else, he suddenly appeared somewhat tragic. Jian Wushuang, standing behind, wanted to pull him back, but Bai Junwang shook his head, walking straight to the forefront. Ha! A bunch of small fries dare to swallow everything alone. The speaker was the island lord Gui Ling, showcasing his formidable strength. Another voice of anger came from another direction. Trash! From the sound of it, there were 2 groups of people. Jian Wushuang also recognized the other group, which included Jin Wuyang and others. The cave was directly lifted, and everyone floated in mid-air, with the seawater receding. Unrestrained power. The entire Black Demon Sea was trembling. A massive turtle shell appeared, and the sea within billions of miles instantly evaporated. Jin Wuyang also refused to be outdone, directly swapping the heavens and earth, causing the dark clouds to sink to the bottom of the sea. Originally, everyone was in the depths of the sea for billions of miles, but suddenly it seemed like they were on the ground, with even the dark clouds appearing beneath their feet. Without the dark clouds, the sky turned pure white with a hint of blue, and the sun and stars were dazzling. From now on, the Black Demon Sea would cease to exist, and this sea area might disappear altogether. Jian Wushuang stood at the back, swallowing hard and secretly thinking, is this necessary? This kind of formidable technique, was it meant to intimidate people? There aren't many Tier 6 emperors present. Intimidating people doesn't require such extravagance. Behave sensibly and hand over the blood luo crystal. Qishui was even more domineering, revealing his true form directly, transforming into a colorful 4-legged exotic beast. However, Gui Ling coldly snorted, taking the initiative to get close to Bai Junwang below and saying, fellow Taoist, we are all people of the Earth realm and can cooperate. We cannot let the inheritors take advantage. Just you guys. Bai Junwang pointed at them disdainfully, revealing a contemptuous expression. Then he continued, you bunch of scraps still want to get the treasures of the 3 Kings' Court? It's simply a fool's dream. A force comparable to the peak suddenly erupted, directly suppressing everyone. Bai Junwang forcibly increased his strength, and both his divine body and physical body were breaking apart, but he didn't care. Following behind Jin Wuyang, Shang was low-key. Originally, he had no intention of taking action, but when he realized that Bai Junwang's strength exceeded expectations, he took a slow step forward and stood out. He stood there, and that space belonged to him. Jian Wushuang stared intensely at the figure below. The familiar sensation made him understand that the opponent was a practitioner of the ultimate Tao, and indeed an ultimate emperor. Don't act rashly. He's a Tier 6 emperor. A Tier 6 ultimate emperor. Jian Wushuang frantically spread the word, trying to stop Bai Junwang from impulsively seeking death. Though he couldn't grasp the specific combat power of the opponent, the 4 words ultimate emperor were irresistible. Indeed, no one understood the ultimate Tao better than Jian Wushuang. If this ultimate emperor's true self was here and not his avatar, he could suppress them with just one hand. Even if Bai Junwang returned to his peak, he wouldn't be a match. This was the formidable power of the ultimate Tao, not to mention that the person in front had a realm far beyond everyone's imagination. Jin Wuyang and others were at ease. With Shang present, who could stand against them? Bai Junwang sneered, just an avatar. However, upon further consideration, in controlling this world, Shang far surpassed him and Gui Ling. Although it was an avatar, the gap was still significant. Shang's avatar only possessed 1/10 of his true power, but it was comparable to a supreme peak powerhouse. Not something a Tier 6 peak could contend with. Tier 6 emperors were divided into 3 levels: ordinary, top, and peak. As for the supreme peak, it represented the limit of space or the divine body reaching its extreme. With a body breaking through 60,000-fold, one could be considered a supreme peak level. However, within the earthly realm, the requirements for reaching the peak level were much lower. The patriarch of the Nalan family, for instance, didn't even deserve to be called supreme peak. Only Guangmu Tianzuan in the heaven realm, along with Wu Zhuo from the Elder Palace and a few palace masters, were true supreme peak powerhouses. When Bai Junwang was at his best, he was a true supreme peak powerhouse, and moreover, he was among the top experts in that level. He once brutally beaten Guangmu Tianzuan and Bai Yi's avatars. The gap between the supreme peak and the Tier 6 emperor was still significant. It was like the disparity between the ordinary origin source Dao and the ultimate Dao. A Tier 6 emperor of the ultimate Dao could already rival supreme peak experts. The main route Shang took was the cosmic secret technique, with no pursuit of pure combat power. He aimed to reach the peak in one go before considering his combat power. Otherwise, with his ultimate Dao, he could perfect the cultivation of space. Apart from the Zhenling, no one in the Qixin Temple could match him. Even the 4 Grand Temple Masters and the 5 Great Demon Masters had to step aside. The divine generals under the Qixin, each one an ultimate emperor, reached the supreme peak level but lacked any breakthrough ideas. They could only be divine generals, not divine masters. After experiencing the ultimate Dao, everyone calmed down. Gui Ling and others had somewhat shallow insights, being newcomers. Although they didn't understand completely, they knew that this was probably one of the top-level experts among the inheritors. In a direct confrontation, they wouldn't stand a chance. Jian Wushuang swept his gaze around, and with Gong Miaoi, he walked to Bai Junwang and said loudly, "Senior, let me say this. At this moment, we are about to open the ruins. If there's a fight, let's do it after we see the treasures inside. Your words, little one, are interesting. I like that. Let's open it first." Gui Ling revealed a smile, easing the tense situation. Jian Wushuang, seeing this, also breathed a sigh of relief. The current situation was beyond their control. He glanced at Bai Junwang and shook his head, signaling not to take action. At this moment, with his current strength, he couldn't intervene. There was also the possibility of falling. Even if he revealed his identity, it wouldn't change much. He doubted whether Zhen Wuyang and the others would sacrifice the opportunity to seize the treasure for his sake. Moreover, now that he was mixed with the people from the Kuei organization, they would have a reason to directly deal with him. A force comparable to the peak suddenly erupted, directly suppressing everyone. He spoke, "Young friend, you've been here for quite some time. You're not waiting for us, are you?" Then he pointed to the tombstone. "Senior, originally there were 2 tombstones here. Using the blood luo crystal, we could only open one, so it's impossible to activate them both." Jian Wushuang explained everything that had just happened, revealing some concealment but not mentioning the inscriptions above. As soon as they heard that it couldn't be opened, everyone's expressions changed. "Humph, this person is quite cunning. Senior, don't trust him." Luo Chuan glared at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang frowned, his aura rising sharply. He shouted angrily, "A mere Tier 4 emperor, you have no right to speak here. If you dare to be disrespectful again, don't blame me for being impolite." His aura had reached the Tier 5 emperor level, crossing the threshold. A Tier 4 emperor had no qualifications to be here, let alone dare to shout at Jian Wushuang. It was as if he was seeking death. Did the other party not consider the possibility of getting in but not being able to come out? Jian Wushuang was not making threats but subtly reminding the Tier 6 emperors around him. With a slight movement during the confrontation, he could easily take Luo Chuan's life. No wonder he couldn't thrive in Mo Luo country as well as the crown prince. His mind wasn't suitable for navigating within the imperial dynasty. Probably, being in seclusion made people foolish. Maybe he hadn't encountered as many people and things in his life as the ordinary folks selling pancakes on the streets of a common town. However, as the disciple of the island lord Guiling, Jian Wushuang didn't say much. Under the guidance of Guiling, Luo Chuan also shut his mouth and stopped talking. Meanwhile, Luo Sha, standing behind, sneered. And behind Luo Sha, there were two people, a father and son. Jian Wushuang hadn't noticed them yet, but if he did, he would be amazed at the terrifying nature of fate.